What's up, guys? How you doing? We got Anna Stachow here. She's a makeup designer and department head in film and television. She's known for her work on John Wick, all 4 Hunger Games, and HBO's upcoming show Task with Mark Ruffalo. Anna, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, you guys. I'm really excited.
We usually do a cheers.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Clink.
Right around the expensive gear.
Yeah, you know.
Who thought we could be trusted?
Cheers.
Chin,
and
chin.
then we just spill it all over ourselves.
Yeah,
That's
guys.
the move.
And that's why the carpet's black.
It wasn't
That's why I declined to go to the white chair today. I was like, you're not getting that one on me. No way, man. I wear black for a reason.
So I hear you have a really interesting story on how you got started in the film world.
Yeah, speaking of bars, I met my mentor. Her name is Neal. She's pretty badass, if I say so myself. She's the only woman with 3 Academy Awards for what we do in makeup at the moment. Although there are some incredible people coming up behind her, so hopefully that will, that we'll continue to get some killer awards from that. But yeah, I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, when they were filming the first Hunger Games, and I'd already been trying to get into the film world, but absolutely no one. Like, I shouldn't be sitting here. I have no one in my family that was in the film industry, nothing like that. So I roundabout ended up in Asheville, North Carolina. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but ended up out there. And one night, literally walked into a dive bar, and she was standing right there. She was sitting at a table with like Gary Ross and T-Bone Burnett and like all these badass people. And like, I had total tunnel vision. It was like, there was no one in the room but her for me. You know what I mean? And so I had this opportunity like to see my life split in front of me in this really epic moment. And yes, I was sober, actually. At the time. I should definitely put that into
10 minutes of this story.
10 minutes of the story, I was sober. So, and it's like a dive bar in the middle of Asheville, North Carolina. Like, it's like there's no windows in it, like it was wild that everybody was there. So I walk over to her and I'm like, okay, so I'm like walking across this bar. It's like, I'm either gonna be the kind of person that's gonna grab whatever by the horns and like, or I'm gonna be somebody who's gonna regret this for the rest of my life. And what's the worst that could happen? I'll talk to my idol and have like a 10-minute conversation. It'll be cool. So I like walked over to her and I was like, excuse me, Ms. Neal, I'm a huge fan of your work. And was like, my knees buckled underneath me or whatever. And she turned around, she goes, are you a makeup artist? And I was like, yeah. And then like the entire room conspired against me. Like this dive bar happened to turn into like from a fine dining restaurant into like vinyl dance party at night. Like it's actually really dope. Shout out to the Admiral if it's still around. So it was like the waiters were coming and taking the chairs. So she like offered me a chair and then like someone pulled it out from under me. And like, so it was just like, and then all of a sudden the music started playing really loud and the speakers were right behind us. So it was like everything was in my way to have this conversation. And she, eventually she was like, I gotta go to the bathroom. I was like, do you want a drink? I had no money to buy her a drink. Like I did not, when I say I was broke, I mean like $5 in my bank account, if that. And I was like, yeah, of course. What do you want? Vodka soda, right? Because that's what LA drinks. I hate to say it, but it is. So, I go over and I asked my friend who's the bartender. I was like, you gotta give me a vodka tonic for a deal. And he was like, what? Okay. So he does. And so I'm like standing there. I like make somebody else talk to me to like look like I wasn't just waiting for her to come out of the bathroom. And she finally comes back out and, I grab her and I say, do you want to go outside? And we chat for like 20 minutes. We go outside on the patio and we talk for, maybe 20 minutes, probably like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember saying to her, I said, I'm just a huge admirer of your work. There's very few women that do what you do. And I was very wrong about that. But it's women were really not very visible at that point, more than they have been in the past. But still, it was mostly behind the scenes. If when there were women that were doing big special effects makeups and big character makeups and stuff, she really broke the glass ceiling for us when it comes to that. So I was chatting with her about that, and that's actually what she said. She's like, there's actually a lot of women that are doing this, and she named her key on that movie, and a whole bunch of other people then that I came to know throughout the years of my apprenticeship with her. So, so we chatted for about 20 minutes, and she offered me a job.
Hell yeah.
This sounds like a movie. Like
Right?
I imagine you walking in the bar and a spotlight comes on her table, and you're like,
Like everything just like stops, slow motion in between there, and it kind of felt like that as it was happening. Not as much the slow motion, but I just was so hyper aware that like this was such a huge thing to like be in front of this person,
Yeah.
and like in the middle of a town of at the time that was like 70,000 people, I think, in Nashville. Like it was really small when I was there.
so you weren't in any film, or like you weren't doing photo before that, and nothing? You just had you knew about her work.
Anything that would hire me. So I had started, so I'm from Minneapolis, so that's a huge theater town. We actually have the most theater per capita outside of New York.
Did not
compared
know
to any
that.
other city. So there's some incredible, like I didn't know that community theater was what community theater is until I left the Twin Cities, because it was all like Tony Award winning actors that came and did our like community center theater there, just because of the way that theater had developed there. We had the Guthrie Theater, which was the, foremost American rep. I'm going to get eviscerated by the theater people on this,
I don't think we have a huge theater audience,
there's
but I
gonna
could
be
be
like
wrong
four
about
theater
that.
folks that'd be like, but yeah, so I was an usher at the Guthrie Theater. So I started in theater for doing makeup work. I thought I wanted to be an actor. That was really where I started. I thought I wanted to be in front of camera, and then cut to right now. That is absolutely not what I want to be doing.
Cheers.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that theater training and that performance training is what kind of seeped into my bones about what I love about creating characters and telling stories like this. And that certainly is something that I think V personifies in the way that she has created character after character after character that has just gone into our zeitgeist. I mean, Beetlejuice,
Yeah,
Edward Scissorhands,
those are
like
massive. Yeah,
Ms. Doubtfire,
Wow.
Jack Sparrow, Katniss Everdeen, let alone the countless other movies that she's done that were like the one-off movies in between.
Right.
I realized that so many of my favorite movies growing up were movies that she'd done. That movie Gattaca, you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, I should have IMDb'd her to double check
That's
that was
interesting
her in
because
that.
like
But
that's not even like a heavily like creature or anything like that. Like the other
no,
ones
and
are,
I think that's the misnomer. I think we're in a time of filmmaking where there's like only two types of makeup. It's either beauty and straight and regular, or it's special effects and prosthetics and like monsters and stuff like that. And those have always been there, but the problem with that is that it's leaving out this whole huge set of just character actors, right? And prosthetics are another tool in our arsenal to be able to change one human being into another human or non-human, however wild it goes. But there's, beyond just like the monsters and the or the wounds, that's another big one, especially here in New York. We get a lot of gunshot holes,
cop shows or something.
cop
down
shows.
there? Yeah, like,
Occasionally get like a cool broken leg, or you shoot side of somebody's head off. I've done a couple of those. Those were fun, but the big prosthetic makeups that I think of to be sort of the epitome would be like, do you guys remember the Jim Carrey Grinch movie? Mm-hmm. All those Who's? Yeah. Those were all prosthetic makeups with a beauty makeup over the top of it.
Right.
And that skill set doesn't necessarily translate exactly through those. Yeah. So not every beauty artist can do effects, and not every effects artist can do a beauty. In fact, often those two are not able to do both. Right. So you end up with people like me in the middle who love to do both of those things, but I'm here and in it to find those characters. I'm here to find whatever little bits and pieces, however big the makeup is or small or subtle. I shouldn't say small, how subtle it could be. That's what I love.
There are definitely projects that come like, and it's not like you're saying, it's not every year or something like that, but like, Churchill or The Whale. Yeah. Or Penguin now, probably most recently, of like, you see these actors and you're like, that's not that person.
Yeah, man, the work those guys were doing over on Colin for the Penguin is stunning. When I saw that first makeup come out, I was like, and I think it was probably when the movie came out that I first saw the blips of it, and I think he was doing the voice and stuff in there, and I just said, that's it. That's what, that's the epitome for me, because you are fully transforming someone into another person, and that was what was so beautiful about that makeup. And V did the Tim Burton Batman. So she did Danny DeVito in that. So like I came up with that in, you know, one of my favorite things ever to do was to go into her garage and like go through all her Polaroids because she kept all her Polaroids from all of her movies.
That's cool.
So she's got those in storage somewhere. And so that was always my treat. I was like, dude, can I go look at the pictures? And I'm like, in there looking at it because they were all her test photos too, you know? So it was like the stuff that didn't make it to camera. That you would see a bunch of different iterations of things and stuff like that. And that's the kind of meat that I was always looking for when I was first coming up was that the like, okay, well, what didn't make it to camera and why?
Right.
But I think it's a really different mindset when you go into makeup thinking about it like a character makeup as opposed to either a special effects or a prosthetics makeup or like a beauty or contemporary makeup.
That almost seems like a theater thing too, because it's like, you know, on stage everything's exaggerated so that people in the back can see it.
Right.
So it's that almost like through your background and that almost lends itself to.
I think so. Yeah.
Middle ground.
And then alternately incredibly hard because when you do theater and opera. Broadway folks will be able to tell you this. Anybody who's doing any sort of stage work, you're so exaggerated that then to take that hand to translate those things down into film quality, where like your camera is right here. You know, Severance would be like that. I did the first season of Severance, and that's my second job I've done with Ben Stiller, and that Ben's tough, man. Ben has an incredible eye. And he demands a level of excellence that you always push yourself to get into, you know. And what can get tricky in that, and that comes down to the meat of what we do, is that I'm a translator. So I'm taking whatever it is that he wants to see on camera, and then I have to physically make it happen. Right. And like, doesn't matter what all the other problems are. Like, you know, this person could only have one eye, and I have to make them have two. I don't know, you know, and I'll figure it out. But I haven't had to do that yet. But that does sound like.
Is that a common
I think I just spoke it into existence, though.
Next job.
Yeah, seriously. They were like, so.
We heard you can do this.
Yeah, so we heard you could. So yeah, I mean, it's so when you work with somebody like Ben, your, you know, when your edict is, I don't want to see makeup. And you're going to have a camera that is literally seeing through the baby hairs on someone's skin to layers of like hyperpigmentation, which are just like, you know, freckles and brown spots, stuff like that. I don't know why I looked at you guys like you would have no idea what hyperpigmentation was. Guys, hyperpigmentation is this thing. But I just wanted to include you in the, you know.
Thank you.
In the skincare rundown over there. But yeah, so, you know, so you're working with technologies. You're not allowed to use your actual tool, which is makeup, right? Because when I'm putting makeup on somebody's face, I can control it then. I can control, like, it's, if you think about it, you cover up a zit, right? Like, I'm controlling what you see in that. If you don't let me put makeup on it, I can't control if that zit exists in episode 4 and 7 or not, because that's when we shot it. You know, like I have no control over someone's actual biological skin. So when you work with somebody like Ben who doesn't want to see makeup, you start to have to get really creative with how are you going to tell the story of this character? How am I going to transform this actor into somebody who's totally different?
Yeah.
You know, so it gets tricky. So in a lot of ways, prosthetics are fun and easier when it comes to transformation because you have more things to work with. Harder to actually pull off because you're putting something fake on top of, you know, something fake to look like real skin. So that's really hard. So it's not that one's harder or easier than the other. They're just different kind of challenges.
And then
each thing.
did you like get formal training in this? Did you just like kind of like...
Yeah. I just went on tour with Vimeo and we just rock and rolled around town. So I am probably the luckiest human being on the planet. I had the most unbelievable, like, on OJT training of this. It was terrifying in the beginning because I didn't really know how to do makeup. Like, I mean, I was doing photo shoots and like an indie movie here or there that I happened to know somebody who did a thing. And I was like hand laying a beard going backwards up a mountain in the back of a van. Cause like, I was like, yeah, that's what you do. That was awful. Only did that
like,
once.
It feels like a haiku.
Yeah, it kind of felt like it. I was so motion sick when we got out, I couldn't film. I was like, I just have to lay here, you know, but I was going to get the job done. So I was really floundering in that sense. And, for me, I learned through absorbing any sort of information I could from anywhere. So there wasn't a lot on YouTube when I first started in terms of like actual instructions for things. There was later on a great resource, Stan Winston's school, which everybody should go be a student of. You guys can do it. We can do it. They have phenomenal classes that are all online. So everything from like animatronics and, just like cool shit in addition to prosthetics, because Stan Winston did like Jurassic Park and all the big dinosaurs and all that stuff. So I essentially was working with V. By the time I met V, that was my like introduction and training in Hollywood. So that's like, okay, this is the big leagues. Like this is how it's supposed to be. So I had the top of the line training working with her on the Hunger Games.
You went from like here to
0 to 100. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, and I got to tell you about the background. It was a week before I set foot on set also. And also like, it sounds really glamorous, but what I actually did with her on that was such grunt work. And like, I think my first day on set of this stuff was a week or two into us actually filming. But because I was doing a bunch of background stuff, I never actually made it to set because we had like 800 background or something like that. They were all in the Capitol looks. So it was like...
It's a lot of BG.
It was a lot of BG. And they couldn't sit down in their costumes. So like... Yeah. Right?
Just 800 people standing.
And then they had to all match, right? So we had multiple days. The hair department had 10 interns. Like they had all the hairdressers. There's either 40 or 50 additional hair and makeup for that.
That's crazy.
It would go up and down. Sometimes it was like 25 hair, 25 makeup, and then sometimes they'd bring in as the numbers went up. These were on the first couple. The later ones, we ended up having like 1,300 background, which then got even cooler and more wild. That's when we did definitely have, I think, 40. So we were managing an army of additional hair and makeup people. But so I think doing that and getting to be next to V and the people she had running point in her different departments, right? So she had her key, she had her background supervisor, all of whom were also department heads. Like that was kind of her deal. She hires a bunch of people that are also department heads to run each of these different zones, essentially. And that's probably the smartest thing I'd ever seen, and it was...
Can you actually break that down for us? Because
Yeah.
it's like now that you're a makeup department head, and like that obviously that means you're the head of the department.
Mm-hmm.
But the on-set person is the makeup key. Am I correct?
No, that doesn't actually work the same way for us.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people like key is always listed on the call sheet. There is a key. For
Yeah.
most other departments, the key is the head.
Is the head of
so
department.
what is and then who do you guys?
I don't actually know why we do this differently.
Because I'm also here. I'm curious as far as character design.
Key is our best boy.
Right. Okay.
So Key is our best boy, essentially. It doesn't work in the same way where like best boy's your truck person or, with props, if you have a truck person for that. We don't have a truck person. We have to do all of our work in the mornings or throughout the day. Then we have to go to set with our actors. And then we also have to do all of the administrative work on top of that. So the way prop masters have an on-set and then they have the prop master, well, I do both. I'm the on-set and I'm the head of department. Huh. It is incredibly challenging, and probably not the most efficient way to do that.
And that does the head defer to? I'm just gonna
Directors.
Okay, so when let's talk about
showrunner.
Let's talk about let's keep it with the Hunger Games. Like all of the people in the Capitol, like they have very unique character designs, especially like the head of people.
Yeah.
So like the V's designing the makeup aspect to it, and the hair.
So,
are they talking to each other, or is
absolutely.
the production designer telling them?
Everybody. This is the most collaborative business I think you could possibly get into.
There's no one person that's character design.
No, and if you think about it, I kind of say my job as a makeup artist is to synthesize like 5 different people's idea of who this character is, right? So you've got an actor, you've got a writer or director, you've got a costume designer, you've got a production designer who's ultimately knows the world or is thinking about the world, and then you have the actor. I might have already said that, but you've got an
they
actor.
get 2 votes.
They get two.
They might get 2 votes.
One is them and one is their ego.
Ew. But and two, like, there's plenty that are a little tough, but one of my absolute favorite things to do is to actually get down into it with the actors. And when you get an actor that really wants to change and transform, as opposed to someone who just kind of looks like themselves, and then they look like themselves in the movie, like, I don't have a lot of interest in doing that over and over and over again. You know, like, I just want somebody that wants to tell stories and transform in some capacity. So it's my job to sort of take all of those people's ideas and what they're telling me these people should look like. You know, with the costume designer, they really are talking about the silhouette. So they're going to establish the color palettes with the production designer and, you know, and DP, you know, the DP, production designer, costume designer, hair department head and designer, makeup department head and designer are all, like, fundamentally, we are so in lockstep with each other, or we should be, because that's really who we people the world. The production designer says, this is the world we made, check it out. Right. And we're like, cool, what do those people that live there look like? You know, and then I get to start asking things like, you know, because I have to tell this character's life story on their skin. Yeah. And skin is a living organ, right? So, like, not only is my actual job to do with a living organ, right? And all the things that have to do with that, right? Skin's an organ, isn't it?
It's the largest organ.
It's the
Largest organ.
It feels weird that you're here because you're usually the God voice, and then you still are doing the same voice in here.
But it's still there.
But then you're here.
every like 4th word, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's there is no real way to do it without collaborating. I mean, it's possible to get something to camera without doing that, but it's never going to look as good, and it's never going to really truly sell what you're trying to sell. Right. So, like, per se on Hunger Games, I watched and was privy to, this is why I had the best training in the world. Linda Flowers was our fabulous department head on the first couple, and she and V had worked together many times. And so I would just be in on the meetings of the two of them going through stuff and looking at it and saying, oh, let's try this or this. And then I'd go look at what the wigs were, or I'd get sent to go take a picture of something. Because the first Hunger Games, we were shooting in outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in an old Philip Morris cigarette factory. It was like 1 million square feet, the weirdest campus ever. It was like, you know, it was one of those things where, like, you had to drive in through a guard gate, through, like, campus grounds, and there was like a fountain that worked sometimes, but it had been decommissioned. Like, nobody had been there for a really long time. So there was like packs of deer that were just like roving, and you couldn't use the water inside the building.
Sounds like a great location for that movie.
That is
Tell us
where they
more.
actually now they host Hunger Games there for real.
Yeah, now that actually is. But so it was like, you know, this massive compound that we turned into our sound stages out there, which worked great. You know, we had a little back lot, and we did, you know, all these massive set builds and things. But, you know, it was creepy. You had like the shadows on the wood floors of the massive machinery and equipment that had been there before. So it had this really ghostly look to it. There were all these rooms that were covered in dust that just looked like a nuclear fallout, where there would be like a chair flipped over, but then the dust wouldn't be disturbed.
It's like someone's silhouette against the wall.
Yeah, man, it was like, you know, and that was what I mean by, like, that was the grunt work I did. You know, she was like, great, we, you know, V would be like, we have, you know, 8 makeup artists coming in, they're flying in tomorrow, here's what I need a table set up, I need chairs, I need all that stuff. So I was essentially working as a PA in that sense. Right. And I was like, okay, great. And I didn't know anything about film, so I didn't know what I wasn't supposed to do or what I was supposed to do. So I was like, right, my boss told me to go get something, I'm going to go do it. And I was just like hauling stuff and, you know, begged like a dolly cart from somebody somewhere. And, you know, in retrospect, I remember looking back and there was just like Teamsters lined up along a wall, just like watching me haul like just this really heavy equipment down the hallway. And they were just kind of like, you want a hand? Like, as soon as I got past them and was like 2/3 of the way down the hall. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm good. You know? Well, I didn't know anything, man. I didn't know that there was breakfast.
Well, you followed rule number 1 of starting out of don't say no.
Don't say no. That's actually exactly it. You know, I think I didn't say no to a lot of things for a really long time and got really, really burned out. So kids, you can say no. Just be smart about it.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think, like, that movie having like an army of
Yeah.
hair and makeup people. Like,
Yeah.
like, you know, from the camera lighting side of it, like we always look at like G&E, like, oh, they're like an army, but you guys were like probably
We were an actual
you
army.
were probably bigger than the G&E
We
crew.
did, so because then we were also doing second unit. So we were running 2 units simultaneously with all that. And also the Hunger Games casts are massive. So like I cut my teeth on stuff with big cast numbers. You know, when you have 18 principals that are like your regular everyday principals, then plus your like every 3-day principals, and then you have your day players and stuff like that. Those are massive casts that you have to maintain. So like learning how to do all of that stuff, because then you've got all their doubles and you've got photo doubles and then their kids. So the first Hunger Games, a bunch of them were minors. I think they were around the 16 age though. So there's like a cutoff that when you're 16 or over, you can work longer hours or something. I forgot what it is, but something to that effect. So you were locked into like really intense schedules of stuff. Plus then if things went sideways on set, and then, you know, it's where, though I will say, I learned to wear a walkie doing that. And like, I've never looked back.
Wow.
I wear a walkie on set.
Wow, you are a rare
Well,
breed.
yeah, you're.
Well, thank you. There's a few of us. There's a couple of us that do it. But
You
speaking of the
you caught me off guard. I was going to ask a question. Now,
Ha-ha. That goes back to the petty thing I was going to say earlier, is that, you know, when I get a sort of similar pushback when I say I wear a radio, or if I request a radio, you know, there's some AD departments that'll be like, absolutely not, I can't trust you. Like there's a lot of,
yeah. What
there's
channel?
some stuff. One.
Yeah.
Ooh, shit.
Damn.
Yeah, they don't want you on their channel.
Yeah, no, they sure don't. They sure don't. Because guess what they can't do? Throw us under the bus when I'm on channel 1. Yeah, I mean, I was not born. I was born last night a little bit in most things, but not when it comes to that. So, but again, there are people that wear those, you know, that wear radios and stuff. I encountered them mostly with like the big creature effects guys. I say guys loosely, but it was really, you know, those folks would be on channel 1, or they'd be talking to
I feel like I've seen an open walkie in a truck before, but I've never seen on a person.
Get that shit out of here.
I'm
I
just
don't leave a woman walking. I have my own surveillance.
I'm explaining my experience as far as
Actually, I borrow surveillances from some of the fabulous first team PAs we have. I love you guys for doing that because I'm such a jerk and I never get my own. But I wear a surveillance. You know, like I won't wear it when I'm actually doing a makeup, because I cannot listen to that and do something creative and make those decisions and give the engagement to the actor in front of you too, because that's the other part, is I'm doing my work at the same time I'm like engaging with this other human.
I might be wrong in this, but I feel like a lot of the projects that I've worked on, like the makeup department head isn't the one that's actually applying the makeup. Do you like?
I do apply the makeup. Yeah.
Is that? Am I wrong in that being?
It's not
kind
a standard.
Of unusual? Like, because I feel like there is more of an administrative aspect to.
I wouldn't say that it's the rule. I wouldn't say that it's a rule that department heads don't do makeup, because we're considered to be, when it comes to our labor breakdowns, we are one of the labor lines.
Right.
You know, they don't consider us to not be labor.
Yeah.
So they're expecting us to do all of the work of a makeup artist as well as then run the department.
That's
as well
what I
as
guess.
then.
Like I look at it the same way as like if the director of photography operates for a scene, like there is an operator there, but they are also qualified to do that. Like obviously, I'm not,
it's kind of like that. Yeah. So we generally a department head, because you're doing so many things, you're having to go to meetings, you're having to, you know, stuff like that, which is really more of an issue for television. Okay. Or for limited series where you're doing things in blocks.
The next episode.
Basically anything that's prepping while you're shooting, whatever the type of project is, anything that, like, if you're prepping while you're shooting, you have to be smart about what actors you do, because you don't want to have an actor necessarily that's in every single scene.
Right. Except
for that often I would say the real standard rule is that the head of department largely does 1 through 5 on the call sheet.
Okay.
So that's a lot of actors.
Yes.
Sometimes, you know, a show or a project is really going to take up a lot of your time or energy with one character or 2 characters that you have. So you're going to maybe do lesser than the rest of your team would, per se. But, you know, I came up in a world where everybody does a ton of actors. Yeah. You know, I mean, V doesn't just do one person.
Right.
She's doing 5, 6, 7, 8 different people.
That's
you know,
crazy.
The other thing we really try to do is I've done this differently depending on the project and depending on what the need was, but the other thing that we try to do is we try to stick with the same artist, with the same actor.
Yeah.
For the continuity of that. It becomes a trust thing. It becomes, you know.
You have a rapport.
You have a rapport. You've got, you know, and for the actor, it's a point person to always know that somebody is watching them and watching out for what their continuity is, for what's going on with their character, whatever that is. And there's a couple different ways to do that. I generally run my departments in a way to where I'm always that person for the main cast, even if they have a consistent artist that's doing them. So that there's 2 layers of that. They know both the head of department is always watching them as well as the artist that they have who's doing them that day. So I kind of like to give everybody a double up in that. But
so I mean, do you think that you learned these kinds of like it almost seems like a fallback, like everybody's double covered? Is that because you started out on such like these big projects with somebody that was so experienced, like somebody that's just coming up and learning, like, and only doing indies by themselves probably would never think about that?
Well, I had such a hard time with that coming up, and I still have such a hard time with this because, you know, we have no real training system in our fields, right? I mean, I don't know if that's the same with you guys or if you guys are getting more OJT in your worlds, but, you know.
What's OJT?
on the job training.
On the job training.
But I understand. I'm literally saying, what's OJT?
No, I mean, I think
Shut the fuck up and sit over there.
But I think you're thrown to the wolves a lot of times, and it's like it's a person's ability to read the room and see what's happening,
Yeah, for sure.
how they can apply that to their next project.
Yes.
That makes certain people shine. Like
I think that's the same for us too. And you know, for me, like I said, I started at this like top echelon of a level. You know, I was learning from people that have been doing this for 35 plus years, who were trained. Like V was trained by this guy named Fred Phillips, who I don't know how much you guys are familiar with the ins and outs of the makeup industry, but women weren't even like, there were like maybe 4 women allowed in the union until the mid 70s. V was one of the first women let into the union.
Wow.
Kind of think when you think about that now, it's bananas, right? Because we equivalent makeup with anything feminine.
Yeah.
But that was not the case of the studios. The studio system was entirely different. They had staff makeup artists. That's where the Westmore family comes in, who are an incredibly famous, well-known, Star Trek
they
world.
Like worked for Paramount, and then they would like.
Yep. It would be that, and you'd be the staff. You know, there's some folks that are still working now who like worked under similar systems. I think Universal in Florida was kind of like that for a while. So some of the people that have done the Universal thing, where they would see like the tours come by while they were doing makeups and stuff for the, but yeah, I mean, it's. I forget what got me onto this portion of this topic.
You're talking about OTJ.
Oh yeah, OJT.
OJT.
So when you work on indies, you don't have anybody who knows more than you around you being like, "Hey, try this."
Right.
Because that's really what it is. I mean, there's absolutely the trial and error part of it, and I'm a sink or swim person. I'm like, "Yep, I don't know, just." Yes, I said yes to the job. I've never done a prostate transfer before. What's a prostate transfer? You know, like
What
you
is
just say
a
yes.
prostate transfer?
Prostate transfer is an appliance. Like we use prostate transfers rather than like a silicone wound. So like if I'm doing a bullet hole, I don't always need a full prosthetic silicone appliance that you got to like, you can do the prostate transfers, which are essentially made out of glue as opposed to silicone, and that go on a lot faster. They're really translucent. They're a lot cheaper to make. They're, fairly resilient. Like, depends who's making them for you. But
it's interesting. So you're doing special effects makeup, and then you're doing the makeup on top.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That is like a very unique.
We get to do the weirdest stuff.
Yeah.
People are like, hey, can you make this person's eyeball look like it's, hanging out? And you're like, sure, give me 10 minutes. And like, you figure out how to do it. Like that, I think ethos exists in all of us as makeup artists. It's that like, well, I don't know, we'll figure it out. I think that's something we all have in common, right? In the film industry, we're always like...
way more shitty rigs in makeup than anybody actually thinks there are.
That's
like,
crazy.
I just made a prosthetic out of glue. Like, that's kind of you. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
you made
buddy.
that up. Like
The whole thing. It's funny. I was talking to my good friend Jason Milani, who's he's the key over on Saturday Night Live. So he's Louis Zakarian's second in command over there. And I was telling him I was coming on this podcast, and I was like, "Do you have any good shitty rig stories, man?" Like I was like, "I'm trying to think of some good ones. Like what do we?" And he goes, "If it worked, is it a shitty rig?" And I was like,
"Yeah."
The entirety of makeup is a shitty rig. I don't know. Because literally, if it works, you can't tell that we did it. Right. So it doesn't matter what I use to make it. True.
Yeah.
See, I think a shitty rig is actually...
camera and it looked good.
Totally.
So.
And I think, there's multiple times when
shitty is the wrong word.
I've shoved manila folders in front of lights to get a color temp correct.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one. I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, but is that that's a shitty rig, right?
Okay, I'm gonna go. I think there's also a lot of
see ya.
No, I'm gonna want to condoms. That's gonna be my shitty rig.
Let's go down the
condoms as intestines.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I follow.
Right. It's a shitty rig no matter what. It does work. I was like, okay, it's semi-transparent. Right, you can see stuff through it, so I can I was doing some, I don't know, something for somebody's friend somewhere at some point in somebody's house, and they called me the night before and they were like, hey, we need to see these guts come, get ripped out of somebody's stomach, and I was like, okay, great. Mm-hmm. What am I gonna do? No budget, none of that stuff, and I was like, well, food. Food is always our go-to. You can make food look like a lot of different stuff. I've used oatmeal for brain matter. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty classic one. I'll get to the vomit later. Those are some really good ones.
Is it cake? It was all cake.
It's just, I'm going to do that to somebody in the makeup department. They're going to, I have a good, I can't say it here because then they'll know.
I can even think if you're out of blending sponges or something, you're gonna find something that works. You're always gonna.
I feel like we are constantly booby trapped, and not always on purpose. Sometimes people will sabotage you. That is not an unknown thing to have happen, but none of the people I work with will do that because that's just not worth it. Yeah. But I have, you will be given an actor's bag, say, on a show that's not yours. I'm filling in for a day. I'm day playing with somebody. And they're like, cool, come to the trailer. You were hired to do background. Come to the trailer. Great, you're going to do a principal. Great, who am I going to do? Cool, never seen any of the people on the show before. Awesome. Here's their bag. There is, if you're lucky, a photo. May or may not be the photo that you're trying to match. But if you're lucky, there's a photo.
Wow.
And hopefully you have the proper lip color, but there will oftentimes just be something missing from the bag, and you're like, well, I gotta figure out how to make that color out of thin air. So what am I gonna, so then you mix something together. I can mix a foundation out of 5 primary colors. There's a lot of color theory and stuff like that, and pigment that goes into what we do.
But you're also working with like you said, the largest organ on someone's face.
Yeah,
You're mixing things together. It seems dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, it can be. That certainly is. Yeah, don't piss off your makeup artist. Because
why do they have a black eye? That's not makeup.
Yeah. I will threaten my actors with that sometimes. I was like, listen, be careful what you say to somebody that knows how to cover up the bruises.
Yeah.
Just
Jesus.
Stay in line. No, they're really, I've had such incredible experiences with actors. It is probably the highlight of what I get to do in a lot of ways is when you find actors that want to collaborate with you. I know I keep coming back to that, but it's there's nothing better, but that you need them to collaborate with you. Speaking of the skin as the giant organ, right. Because it changes. I mean, I've had actors that have come in. There is this odd thing that happens with some fair skin tones where they will just be gray when they come in. I don't know what it is. It's probably circulation or there's some sort of internal thing. But their skin tone from one day to the next will be gray.
It's like log format. Like
A little bit, yeah.
You gotta
It's a
color
little
correct them.
sepia tone a little bit. You just kind of go in there.
what on them? Just
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're fixing it in pre.
Exactly. Talk about like that. Yeah, sure. Go do a movie in black and white.
yeah.
You know?
You're like, that's the person I'm hiring. The
Yeah.
gray person.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. I was watching something that this incredible costume designer, Trish Somerville, who did some of the Hunger Games with us as well. Shout out to Trish, one of the most incredible I've gotten to work with. And she did that show Mank, which of course then was partially black and white and all that stuff. So it was really interesting listening to a lot of the interviews they were doing about that and about all the testing they did and the way that they had to change colors and patterns and all these different things to then translate into black and white. I mean, that's the same thing for us.
Yeah.
You know, red lipstick is not red on, you know, in
It's
black and
different in
white
black
stuff.
and white,
So
yeah. Yellows are different. Yep.
yeah, so you get into that world. And, you know, again, if you don't have a relationship with your DP, with your costume designers, with the production designers, you're dead in the water. You can't do your job if you don't have any of that.
I always thought it was interesting that, like, I understand why this happened, but I always thought it was interesting that that movie won an Academy Award for color correction. Like, the colorist won an Academy Award for
Yeah.
Mank.
Amen.
And I was like, I get it. Like, it's definitely,
The irony, man. The irony is definitely not lost on us.
Ironic that the black and white movie.
Yeah. That's like the silent film winning, you know, sound design.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Sorry, buddy.
Easy job.
But,
An award's
you know,
an award.
Listen, yeah, you're going to take that statue no matter what.
Fuck
You
it,
know what I
yeah.
mean?
If someone's giving it to me, I'm
Yeah.
paying $500 and getting it.
So I think had I not had this variety of training coming up, I wouldn't be able to speak to any of this stuff, you know, because my when you get experience through watching somebody who really knows what they're doing do stuff, you can then start saying, okay, well, why did they make that decision? Like, oh, okay. And so then you start to see why, you know, this is the decision you make in this context. And then I had to go make those decisions myself and fuck it up royally. You know, I mean, I had to go out and be like, well, that works for V. Why doesn't it work for me, man? You know, like there was a lot of that in the early days of that where I was like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like I'm working with people that are not working with, that didn't also work in the same environment,
Right.
which like we don't have the same amount of money. We're shooting a, you know, non-union indie film in Rhode Island. Like it's not the same animal, you know? But I think that's where my producing world came in too. Because when I was doing my apprenticeship years with V, I would like go do a job with her, and then I would be like, "Okay, great. Now how do I get a job?" You know, because she couldn't get me jobs. She was like, "I have no idea how to get someone at your level." I remember asking her, and I was like, "How do I get a job?" And she was like, "I'm so far removed."
You met me in a bar.
Literally. I was like, I know that I was the best drunken decision of your entire life, perhaps, but let me know how to get a job, you know? And so it was like, I was thinking about it this morning. I was like, how do you get a job? I was like,
That's the biggest question in the film industry. It's like,
how do you get a job?
how do you get a job in the film industry? And everyone's like, just work in the film industry.
get one.
You're like, but how did you get the
Which,
first
like,
job?
That, like those answers used to just drive me up the wall when I was, you know, banging on the doors and windows and being like, how about now, guys? What about no? Can I do a movie?
I don't think anything's changed in that.
I don't think so either. You know, somebody told me early on, they said, look, this business is built to keep you out. You know, there's not only like, are you required to go find the secret door that's not marked? There's a guy standing out front of it being like, nah, it's not the door you want. No, it's yours. Or in New York, it's just like...
It's definitely a grip or a Teamster like, nah, that's not
That's not yeah. But if it was a PA, I think you would definitely like...
just walk right past them. Fuck you, buddy.
They try to stop you, but they can't actually touch you.
Yeah.
That was actually something. So I was also...
Wait, can we finish
speaking
your
of-
thought?
Oh, God. ADHD. Which thought was I on?
You were saying like you had a really good thought where you're going like we were talking about how to get a job in this industry, and you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
that's
The answer is
thing.
nobody knows.
And then you're like, there's always like this door, and I felt like you were
No, that's it. That's actually it.
That's it.
That's the
That's
end of the
it.
story.
That's where it ends.
Yeah. It's
Fuck you.
It's that there's it was really hard. I mean, I still to this day, I'm like, I don't know, you meet people. Like that's really what it is that you network and you try to find somebody that'll hire you to do a thing.
Do you think that, so like V working on Hunger Games when you met her, like that is a movie that has a huge cast.
Yeah.
If she was working on something smaller that had, that only had 2 principals or something like that, do you think she would have been able to give you the same opportunity? Like it's a very unique situation where if there's more people, like you get to hire more people.
Nobody wanted me around. Like I think that it's a little bit more common now. When I was doing it, and that's why I said there's no real title for what I did. I was an apprentice, like a full-on old school apprentice. I mean, I sat next to her and watched her do everything. And she included me in the things she was doing so that she taught me how to run a department. She didn't necessarily teach me how to put makeup on, but like I learned a lot. She didn't like to be watched either. And that's not uncommon. Like I don't like to be watched while I'm working on a thing either.
I don't want to be watched either.
I'm like, what do you mean? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain over here. But yeah, I mean, so the makeup technique I learned from her, I learned from watching her backwards through the mirror with my back turned.
Whoa.
Yeah, buddy. Or if I was really lucky, I would get to hold the continuity photo for her. So like when we're doing a makeup and you're directly matching something, you need to have a picture like right in front of you so that you know every brushstroke you're doing isn't screwing yourself up for when you're done. So a lot of times when you're doing a big makeup, you'll have somebody there helping you, whether it's holding glue, holding a fan so that, fumes aren't getting in the actor's face and like holding the photos. And so you learn the dance of a makeup doing that. And it is a dance, right? So I learned through doing that how to do 2-person makeups. And that's not something that everybody can do either. A lot of people can do it, but it's not necessarily intuitive. And I've even taken it into kind of these crazy worlds with some of my really good friends who have a similar hand that I do. We've done like half of actors' faces before. Or
You're talking about working 2 actors simultaneously.
Correct. Yeah, same actor.
No, 2 makeup artists, 1 actor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You're doing the right and someone else is doing the left?
We did do that a couple of times.
Just for fun.
Yeah,
Like
largely.
okay.
What
I was
happens
doing
in the
that.
middle?
Yeah.
I was doing that on this.
You've seen Two-Face, right?
Who knows?
Another Batman
Hopefully
movie.
it matches if you're doing it right. Oh, it's funny. We just ended up doing that on. I did the show called Murder at the End of the World with Emma Corrin and a phenomenal cast like Joan Chen and Clive Owen and just all of these incredible, again, character actors. And Emma's this really amazing actor who can transform into anything. They are a total chameleon. And that is such a gift as a makeup artist to get someone in your chair that's not only open enough to do that, but that just with the talent that they bring does that naturally. Like they were absolutely astounding as young Diana in The Crown. Like to then see them come to our movie or TV show, whatever it was we did, I guess it's a TV show. I don't differentiate between them a lot. I know I should. Everybody wants us to, but
TVs and movies?
TVs versus movies. I mean, there is some that are different, but I've been really lucky to work in that limited series world, which is really like a long form feature.
Yeah, I feel like that.
Yeah.
That's like
You're doing film caliber work.
you're doing a film
Yeah.
because like everyone knows it's going to be over.
Yeah.
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 You've talked a few times about just like you love working with talent that wants to like play
Yeah.
ball and lead into it. What does that exactly mean from like their perspective? Like what is their contribution to that process?
It depends on the show. An actor is always going to come into your chair, and it doesn't matter if they are somebody who's a day player on a cop show, or if they are somebody who's a main cast member, or if they're, a big A-list actor. They're going to come with their understanding of who this person is that they're embodying. And so then it's my job to say, okay, these things you're telling me about this person. Like, I like to ask questions from whomever, whether it's the actor, whether it's the writer, whether it's the director, that tends to be more who would answer that question. But like, what's their backstory? What's their motivation? What was their life like before they got here? Were they wealthy? Were they, did they have access to food all the time? Did they, were they socially accepted, or were they more of an outsider? Like, did they know how to do all the normal social things, like put makeup on the right way? So like there's so much social commentary and like I don't know the right word for that at the moment. I do put lip gloss on for a living, but but essentially there's so much like social information that you can get from an actor, and that may not be like grounded in anything. You know, if there's something in a script, great. You know, this person has tattoos, this person has a scar, this person is, 45 and beautiful, whatever it is. Then you interpret what those things in the script are. But it's the like graininess that I really love.
Do they actually like, I mean, I'm just thinking now, like a background in a police show, like is one of them actually coming to you and be like, can you give me a scar? I think I got shot once. Like what is
they
the
might,
actual
but
level
the answer
of,
is
like,
no.
No. Right.
Yeah. When you're dealing with background, like they may want most of them, especially in New York, or around here because we have so much of that. They're professional. They're professional background players too. So they really they know us. Like there's the same people that I see on different shows, and we catch up, and I say, oh, how's your family? How's this stuff? So there's a community aspect to that with background players as well that. And I don't tolerate anybody that does the hierarchy with background versus principal and first team and stuff like that. That's something that just always has rubbed me the wrong way because we are all human beings coming and doing a job here. So I want to give that person who's coming into a background chair the exact same amount of respect I would the person who's number 3, number 2, number 1 on the call sheet.
Unless they're annoying, and then fuck them. But
you got to do what I say. But I have a really good one for that, where if somebody, because this happens with men a lot, where they won't want to shave for something that we need them to do, and they'll be for like a 1920s period thing, and they'll have like, well, yeah, but no. I mean, there's so much stuff that you can get by with not having to shave your beard that like, so I give them the option. I say, look, I would love for you to stay here and make the money today, but I totally get it if you don't want to do that and you want to jam. 99% of the time they sit down and let me do what I need to do.
Cool.
Because it's like you want to, generally, people are getting hired based off of something about their look.
Right.
So if somebody's got, you can kind of tell when somebody just like personally doesn't want to shave like a scraggly goatee or something that they're just very attached to. But literally. But, that kind of a thing, you're like, do I really need to worry about it? You're going to be really far in the background. That's where that really depends on what the job is, where you can like let that go. Or again, Ben Stiller, there are no corners that you cut with Ben Stiller ever. Do not ever cut a corner. Like Ben Stiller is movie brain in all things he does. He's really, and that's one of the joys of getting to work with him is that nobody's trying to cut a corner because it costs too much money or because it's like, he doesn't do things that are extraneous, but like something we tend to do a lot. Like if you don't want to give a guy a haircut, put a hat on him, right? Don't ever do that on a Ben Stiller job, because he might, it's not just Ben. I think it's anybody that comes from a cinematic storytelling background where you come to set and then these are your chess pieces to put where you would like them to go, not to dehumanize us as we do that, but we very much are like parts of a picture that they're painting. And so, if you limit what your director can do by saying you can't take this person's hat off of them because they're not ready underneath that.
Yeah. I mean, that's almost this very similar thing to like when there are certain people that don't allow like cell phones anywhere near the set, like because it is a distraction, and and so there is a level of filmmaking or TV or whatever, like it can get overboard at some point, but at a certain point you are in a professional environment. Like you got hired for a reason. If you're not willing to do that part of your job, why did you get hired? Yeah,
like you shouldn't be here.
Yeah,
you gotta. I mean, I had a flip phone when I started. Like, I didn't even have, a smartphone when I was doing all this stuff. So speaking of, like, I just figured it out. Like, I couldn't Google anything on my phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't even get cell service where I was. Like, there was, you were really on your own.
Yeah.
But we have to take care of each other better than we have been, I think. And, and I think this comes up with a couple of different things we were just talking about. And it's like, we don't have a tendency to, I used to see this as a difference between movie and television, where it felt like in film, there were people that were much more like collaborative. overall. Like it felt like you were all trying to work together to get this one thing going where it is. And then when I started working in television, it felt more like each department was really more insular. And so, not that we didn't collaborate with each other, but it wasn't the same kind of like whole group effort in the same lift.
I fully agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, did you guys feel that too?
Well, it's also the, it's like, okay, we have 120 days to get this 2-hour thing done, or we have 8 days to get this hour thing done.
Yeah.
So there is a different, and that's, we can put that on the highest level of production. Why are you rushing us?
I think it's way harder to do. I've done a 23 episodic television show. That shit is maybe some of the hardest stuff I've ever done. And not necessarily as a makeup artist, but like just the plain scheduling of that. It makes it, I remember looking at it coming from more of the film world, right? Whether it would be non-union indies, which, the lovely chaos of the non-union indies.
The 18-day sprint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got a couple of 32s in there.
Ooh, fancy.
I know. I think overall, when we create these layers of hierarchy between people, that's when we start to really get into trouble, I think, in our business, right? Like it's when we look at a background player and we say, you're a background player, you're not worth doing the thing that I would do for everybody else, Your parameters are different for what you can do on a background person, right? If it's a contemporary show, you have X amount of time to get X amount of people through, but that doesn't mean that you can't treat that person like a professional actor. They're still going on camera, and everybody always says, well, you don't know who they're going to turn into. And I was like, well, even if they don't turn into anybody, like treat them like a human being, and understand that we are a public-facing, we're a more public-facing department, right? Us, props, costumes. There's totally more that I'm forgetting, but we're dealing with a lot of people throughout a day, and you might be dealing with different people day to day. So, there's always repeats of folks that are kind of a pain that you're like, I'm just going to not deal with this person, or if somebody comes in and is inappropriate, you're like, okay,
Yeah, this guy looks fine. He can wear a hat in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Or he can go home. It's there's also times where I've done that, where if there's somebody who's really giving my artist a hard time, I will absolutely step in and I will get their number and I will boot them.
Wow.
It's
good.
I'm pretty tough when it comes to standing up for my people.
I agree with you. Like, I think it's even on the whole, on like everything, how you're like, everyone should treat everyone a little better on set.
Man.
Because it's like, even the PAs, I see it, where like people look at PAs and they like kind of talk down to them. It's like, I know so many PAs that I worked with back in the day that are now like script writers. They're like,
PAs are literally going to run the studios.
Yeah, they
like
are.
that's the short-sightedness about it. And I think having been a PA too, that was the other side of my education. So I had this amazing education where I was like learning from looking at directors like Mike Nichols and Gary Ross and these guys that were on these movies when I was apprenticing. And incredible DPs and, Dan Mindel, when I was doing a Tom Cruise movie with them, so I was like around all of this stuff that was incredible. Tom's a whole other thing. That's another, like, talk about treating your crew. I mean, he had a coffee cart for everybody every day. He had he brought orchids into the makeup trailer for the team in there for hair and makeup. Like, the best catering, the best crafty, and then he did
or just
for the crew.
Oh, wow.
No, this was for the whole crew. Yeah.
Wow.
And he's known to have that, I think, on all of his shows, and he demands an incredibly high level of performance from everyone around him. Like, there's no room for error.
If you demand that, but then you take care of people, I think that's totally reasonable.
Yep, that's kind of my jam.
The opposite part where you're demanding that and you're not holding your end of the bargain up, and you're trying to save pennies. What is that phrase? Like pinch
Penny
pennies.
pinching.
Yeah, it's a give and take.
Pinching. Or what's another good one? Stepping over $1 to pick up a dime.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically.
there's
so many in our business.
There is something to be said about
We should have a bingo card with those, right? Or like a dartboard that you can throw at them.
Yes.
One of the coolest things that the trade shows used to do for us, the IMATs were a big makeup trade show out in LA, but they would always have panels. So they'd have panel discussions, and I'm a big roundtable fan. I actually, one of my big nerd things is I actually like watching the Hollywood, is it Hollywood Reporter roundtables? The ones of the actor roundtables and stuff like that. I actually find there's a lot you can learn certainly from my world, by listening to what the actors are saying. You know, I mean, I can tell when actors have had bad experiences in chairs, because that'll kind of like, sort of talk about it.
Yeah.
Or you'll hear that somebody doesn't like sitting in the chair for a really long period of time, and they had to do that on the show that they were on. And, you know, those are all like indicators where you're like, oh man, okay, that's not a person who's going to want to wear makeup. So I maybe don't want to, you know, like maybe I got to think about that if I get on a job with them or something like that.
But that's almost along the lines like you were just kind of talking about it. It's like it's the work that you put in offset too. So it's like how much do you actually want this? It's like you can say, oh yeah, no, I would love to be a department head. Okay, what are you doing to make that happen? Like, are you going to work and just doing the job and then going home and now you're on your own time, or are you learning offset? Are you trying to find those new skills? What are you doing? And it's an actor. Oh, I'm an actor that doesn't like makeup.
Okay.
Go fuck yourself.
Listen, your lips to God's ears, man.
Like,
you know,
you
got one for if they're holding their phone too.
Honestly, doesn't that come into like a casting thing at that point? Like maybe don't choose that person for a high prosthetics job.
Yeah, they don't think like that.
But like,
no,
it's also.
I don't think the casting and like money that's involved with names behind something really have a lot to do with that. I think that's more of a like, well, I figured it out. You know, this wasn't a makeup that I did, but again, Woody Harrelson is a great example of that. He's a well-known, staunch vegan, been a vegan for a really, really long time. So when you work with Woody, you get products that are vegan. That used to be a lot harder to do than it is now. Now there's certainly that stuff. I know V at some point even had some stuff physically made for him.
Wow.
But she did a job where she turned him into LBJ. And so that was a huge prosthetic job. And Woody doesn't love wearing anything. You know, he's kind of, be a little bummed out if he's got to be stuck in some glue for a while. And there's a lot of actors that are like that. And that's really cool. Like, Woody's not bad for being bummed out that he doesn't like to wear glue. Because, like, you're wearing some stuff glued to your face for like 9 hours a day. You know, that sucks. That doesn't feel good. You know, there's some actors that are like, oh my God, I love this because I can completely disappear. I'm telling a lot of V stories today, but one of the ones that she talks about is Robin Williams. When she had him in the Mrs. Doubtfire makeup, you know, some panel, it's something I was at with her, somebody asked if he had a hard time wearing that because he was a very sweaty human, and so that can deeply affect the makeups that you're doing.
Sweaty and hairy.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Hairy we can do stuff about. Sweaty,
I've
there's
seen the
less
movie.
things we can do
He
about.
does his own makeup.
You're right. You're right.
He did it all.
What are you, a producer? I totally think that he did his own makeup on that movie. You're right.
I saw the pie.
The pie scene, you know? Yeah, so he apparently used to love it. Like, he used to, because it was at a time where he was really heavily recognized. And so before the movie came out, he'd be like running around talking to people downtown San Francisco, wherever it was they were filming that. And he was just having a great time in it because he could be anonymous and disappear into it, you know? So there's a lot of stories like that, you know, where the actors absolutely love getting to do it. Like, nobody wants to wear a wig or a fake beard or something like that for 17 hours. Nobody wants to do anything for 17 hours.
No.
You know, I certainly don't. I don't want to do stuff for 17 hours.
No one wants to work for 17
Nice 10-hour triple time, golden time table. You know, one of those.
So you're talking about all these prosthetics, like, it seems like you've worked on a bunch of different movies. Like,
I have, yeah. I've been all over the place.
So, like, what's, like, your favorite type of movie to work on? Or, like...
It's like picking your favorite child.
I know, choose one. Choose.
I love that was the age. Like, I know, do it. Yeah.
Line up by the fireplace.
Yeah, exactly. Who's got the biggest amount of residuals? No, just kidding. We don't get those. You know, I love action movies, but because I love stunts. It's like dancing, and you know, I think getting to be on the John Wick movies, especially, and the thing
Were
that
you
was
on all the John Wick?
I was on 2 of them. I did 2 and 3.
Okay, cool.
But what was great about those movies is that the stunt team from that was the stunt team from Hunger Games. So they were the first people that I met, and was starting to do this. So it all comes. It all comes.
So they're like, yo, what up?
Yeah, exactly. So our director on that, Chad Stahelski, was our second unit director on Hunger Games and stuff like that. So I'd known the 8711 guys for a long time, and talk about best at what they do. There's incredible stunt performers out there, but they did a really interesting thing with their business, with pre-vising and really training actors to do a lot of their own work. And so you get that from movies like Bombshell and, the Wick movies and stuff. That's now become sort of an industry standard. You're starting to see a lot more actors want to get trained to be able to do more of their own stuff. Even on Wicked, you saw Cynthia Erivo singing live in an unbelievable harness rig. She's basically in a gimbal running around there belting it out. So all of that is stunts, right? So you wouldn't necessarily think of Wicked as a big stunt movie, but there's going to be a ton of stunts in that. I think anything overall that's world building, that's really where I want to go.
And John Wick kind of did that.
Oh, hell yeah.
John Wick was a really fun version of that.
It's fucking
the whole,
like a segue, guys.
I'm trying to fucking tee it up. The whole continental, pay with the golden coin underbelly of the world, is so cool.
It was so fun.
My first time on the John Wick movie, I think it was one of the bank scenes that they turned here was one of the continental lobbies that the SWAT team invades, and when they throw out the flashbang into the bank lobby, and it's you're talking about the stunt team. That's the coolest fucking group of people that I've ever I'm just sitting off to the side this is so badass, and it's fucking
and that's
sick.
just another day at the office for those guys, and you're like, what? You just threw yourself off a building. I've always really again, because martial artists are so incredible anyway, that when you see people who just stage combat has always been really interesting to me. Just all of that, it's fake, but it looks so rad. Yeah. And then I got really, really, really spoiled. I did this movie called Oblivion, and
I remember that movie.
That's Tom Cruise.
That was that was my TC movie that I got to do with him. Under a wonderful woman named Michelle Burke, 2 Academy Award winner.
Look out, V.
Yeah, right. Actually, V's the one that introduced me to her, ironically.
That was shot a lot on the early concept of the Mandalorian XR stage, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know a ton about the tech specs of what the Mandalorian stage is,
but it's like LED
virtual walls and shit like that. Yeah.
So what we did, that movie was amazing. Everything was practical in that. I mean, it was I'm so spoiled for forever because we had a real working spaceship. It was a spaceship and it moved up and down and it had the doors that open and there was stuff inside you could touch. I never got to go inside of it.
So partially functioning spaceship.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
Minus the space part.
I mean, listen, I'm not at liberty to say I signed a very hefty NDA, so which I'm pretty sure that they would still come for me. If I did that. But
Tom Cruise comes here, we're getting him on the podcast.
Yeah, man. He'd be great. He would be an incredible person. Talk about a filmmaker who knows every freaking element.
He's really the only one pushing action movies right now.
Okay, so you're also talking about, you just mentioned a bunch of actors wanting to learn how to do their stunts. Tom Cruise is the biggest person in this. Do you find...
Yes, he does do his stunts. But I can confirm that.
One of the biggest, scariest things about that, and it's him being an executive producer kind of subverts this whole thing because it's his money he's putting on the line. But are you afraid of seeing an actor do this, get hurt, and shutting down the whole brand? Now there's 500 people out of work.
Oh, I'm always afraid of seeing somebody get hurt, but I think that's because I'm watching people put themselves in extraordinary circumstances to do their job. Yeah. I mean, I've watched him run 100 yards, jump over a railing with a fireball chasing him.
Yeah.
Running is kind of his thing, right?
Right. But
running, jumping. I mean,
obviously it's scary if anybody puts themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
For you to also be the person that's top of the call sheet and needs to be there tomorrow. There's a little bit extra level of
we're fucked. Studios are the most concerned about it, but there's so much insurance, I'm sure, that goes into that kind of a thing. And
that doesn't come down to the crew, though.
No, it doesn't. But I think when you're looking at operating and doing things at that level, there are so many mechanisms of safety involved. I think overall, the thing that sucks about the way that safety works in this country overall is that it's the worker that has to hold the employer accountable for those safety standards. I mean, that's the OSHA dealio. So that,
free.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid.
It's rough, man, because, you get...
Because you get the whistleblower shit, and then you start going down this pathway, and then people are like, we need work, fuck you, don't try to stop this.
It's hard, and that's a whole other, we're gonna come back and we're gonna have a whole other podcast on this one. But safety is also I'm also a huge stickler for that. But again, I've worked at these... on these shows where that is the standard. It just is that. You don't do stuff that's unsafe.
Right.
Period. You don't rush it. If it's rushing, you slow it down. I've been on sets where there have been some pretty catastrophic injuries. Thank God nobody has ever passed away on a set from an injury that I've been on. We've had some heart attacks and stuff like that over the years. But I've been around some pretty catastrophic injuries. I was with a Chapman crane driver who the 16-wheel rig went over some cables, got out of sync, and it dumped the weights, 2,000 pounds of weights on him. Thank God he's walking, was up and walking in traction right after the thing. So, what we do is really dangerous. It's like you were saying earlier, I got a lot of chemicals in my truck. I got to know which ones of those you put together and which ones you don't, I know special effects guys always get really when I ask them about for the MDS sheets or their, breakdown of what's in their smoke and all that stuff. Why? They're like, how do you know that word?
Why do they get?
I don't know. They feel like somebody's challenging them or something. And I was like, I just want to know what's in it, man.
I mean, do you get that a lot on set? Do you get challenged on set by these other departments?
I mean, atmosphere is huge nowadays.
I do get challenged, but not that much anymore. I mean, I think generally... every now and again, it's somebody who doesn't know me, maybe, or who hasn't ever worked with me that I'll come and ask them a question. They're like, well, why do you, makeup girl, need to know this thing about what's in the smoke? And I was like, well, because I need to know which one of my respirators to pull out, bro. Particle size, man. It makes a difference.
It does.
Are these oily particles or are they not oily particles? You got to, and again... I come from a background that isn't...
It's not wrong.
No, folks, this is why you hire a professional. This is things that never even I would consider.
Hire me, guys. I think, with safety and when you work on a bunch of different kinds of jobs, each one is going to have its own particulars of what safety flavors you need to know about on that job. If you're doing something on the Wick movies, what was it? Which one had the glass house? Was that 3?
Yeah.
3 had the glass house, right?
They were trying to set the record for most glass shattered. Yeah.
We loved smashing glass on that one, man.
2 was the mirrors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 2 was the mirrors. The knife fight in the was that 3?
No, Ruby Rose I think was the second one. That was.
Ruby was. I did Ruby. Yeah.
That was all the mirrors. Same.
Oh, that's right. That was the Hall of Mirrors. See, I can't even remember these, but they're so good. It's all just one world, right?
It's one long movie.
I've got some pictures of it that I'll send you guys that you can maybe put on the website or whatever of the giant horse rig that we had on which I guess would have been 3, where we did the horse under the subway.
Yeah. That was out near you, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, we were out of our minds by the time. That was 3 months of overnights of 17, 18-hour days on that job. That was we lost our minds fully on that job. I don't know who I was at the end of it, but it's too many nights, guys. Day for nights, please. Everybody, can we please do day for nights?
Yeah.
But action doesn't look as good in the daytime.
No, it doesn't.
It's true.
So I'm reading your notes, and during the pre-interview, you said something about throw blood or dirt on it. Does that kind of...
Oh yeah, when in doubt, throw blood on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be on my tombstone, I think, probably.
It's just going to be red.
Just got a little, which is...
Is that a trick you picked up, or is that just something
I think it's a bit of a colloquialism for everybody. I mean, I think that's I'm sure I picked it up from somebody somewhere. I don't know who was the originator of it, but It's true. I mean, the harder thing to do is when you can't throw blood on something. Whereas if you've got a prosthetic, some kind of a wound or something like that, and you can see the edge of it, you know, and you're like, nothing you're doing is working to camouflage it, throw a little blood on there and you'll never see it. You know, so long as you break up the eye, because like a straight line on anything, immediately going to pull your eye to it. It's like if you ever see a bald cap, like it's not necessarily
saw a really bad one in a movie.
You did? I love a good bad bald cap.
It was Mark Wahlberg in that Flight Risk. Have you seen this movie?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
This just came out.
Oh my god.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Bad bald cap.
Bald caps are hard. I mean, I keep thinking about Stiller, but I was doing Escape at Dannemora, and I was working with Bernadette Major and Don Cosma again, and we had to do a bald cap on Paul Dano, and I think we had like 40-ish minutes, 45 tops to get this thing on him.
Damn.
And like, that's not how long a bald cap takes, unless you work for Saturday Night Live, and then you're insane. Jason Milani, I'm looking at you. Those guys can do bald caps in like literally 6 minutes, I think is their record. I don't even know.
It's nuts.
They're bananas. They're a whole other category. Louis and Amy and all those guys over there that are like, whew, those.
They're operating like Broadway theater level, but for TV, like where they're just like ripping people.
Louis
in and
got
out
an
of shit.
insane Instagram. I don't know if you guys follow it, but it's like he'll
amazing.
post all of the pre-pro that they do for like every single rig, and then do time lapses of like how they do it in between sets.
Yeah,
and
they
you're
time
just
lapse almost all of their stuff
awesome.
in the makeup room with them. Their makeup room is also tiny. Like they're
Everything over there is tiny.
yeah, because it's the OG building. Like
Yeah.
they can't do anything to it because it's the historic registry or whatever. So they're like gassing everybody out. You
That's
know.
what I remember when I went there, because you think like you see it on TV, you're like, oh, this is probably huge, and then you get there, you're like, this is it.
Yeah, I remember being floored. I mean, there's very few things that I've been like that starstruck when I've gone in, and walking onto 8H was that. I went over there, and a friend of mine brought me in there to meet everybody and kind of do the thing, and I walked onto the stage for the first time, and I was like, it's so small. And I was like, oh my God, all of the set pieces are on top of each other.
It's fucking crazy.
And that was when I realized that all of the quick changes and shit that they're doing is all while moving on the back of a set piece in the dark. So like, guys, and I mean, that's Broadway for you, right? Like
Yeah, it's Broadway, yeah.
Broadway is one of the few things that I've never done, and I would really, really love to, but somebody's going to have to hold my hand, because they couldn't just throw me onto a track and have me have any idea what I was doing.
I bet you do great.
I would end, man, it's dark back there and everybody moves really fast, and like, listen, it's hard. So yeah, but I mean, I think that's so like the makeup that I would do wouldn't necessarily change dramatically for Broadway. I mean, it would, because it's a theater. But all in all, like the actual doing of your job beyond putting makeup on is like 1/10 of what I do. And then it's all the other stuff that you have to learn how to do. And I think working on a lot of different types of projects have really given me this amazing background in that. Although it doesn't make me look as appealing to fancy people, if that makes sense. You know, like rather than me having like
just focusing
on like hit after hit after hit after hit, I was like going through all of these different skill sets and types of jobs, and that makes it sound like it was really intentional, but it was really more just like, are you available? Yes.
Yeah, but that's how you get good at what you do. You just need the wide swath.
And for me too, I worked my way up again. So like I started as like the bottom. I was an intern on my first movie, so I didn't even get paid. But I did drive away with a minivan full of makeup. So
you drove away with a
Wait,
minivan.
with the minivan?
yeah, but I showed up with the
after the show.
minivan.
She didn't steal it
It wasn't
during
the show minivan.
I was like,
I don't know.
let's clarify there. Did you steal a car?
You were like, this story just got so much better. Wait, you stole a car?
Full of makeup.
Full of makeup. Yeah, I stole the makeup trailer.
Oh, respect.
No, but I did. I was commuting an hour each way. Didn't make any money. I want to say I had $10 in my bank account for the entirety of that first movie. That if another woman, fabulous woman, Chris Evans, who's also a big part of raising me, if she hadn't shown me how to do gas reimbursements, and had put in for me for that, because I, as the intern, never would have gotten gas reimbursed on that. But she put it in for me. So that basically was how I was able to keep showing up at set every day.
Wow.
Well, you only had 5 during the Hunger Games, so you're clearly,
I'm
escalating.
Yeah, it was literally like there, like if I had to pay for gas, like I couldn't get there. I was staying on the floor of somebody's house I'd never met who was like in Europe. And there was like a random cat that showed up at the door, and I was like, "Am I supposed to do something with this cat?"
This is like a very common
Story, yeah.
story
No, not
between a lot of
uncommon.
people. How'd you get in the industry? I don't know. Someone knew someone, and I was staying in their house when they were in
Yeah.
Europe or South America. And
Yeah,
there was this
somewhere.
cat. There was a cat that I had to watch. But I didn't
great.
do anything with the cat.
And I was like, "Is this cat in this house? Did these people leave this cat here?" There was a lot of questions. So I think going back to the having to do a ball cap in 45 minutes, there were 3 of us to get that done. And then, of course, it goes on camera and it's under a direct hard light like 4 times. It's walking through like a prison hallway. So it's like hard light. And then you're like, oh no, because you slam something like that on so fast and there's no time to check it. It's just like it's got to go on, it's got to get on camera, and you better hope that it worked or you are good enough to fix it in a last look, which you can't really do on a ball cap. So, that when you work under that kind of duress all the time, you get really good really fast. And I think that's where when you have the ability to work on a wide variety of projects, that's where you start really forming those muscles.
Why is a bald cap not hair?
Wait, what? Say that again?
Makeup puts a bald cap on it. Makeup will cover the hair.
This is a really interesting question. I don't know that anyone's ever actually asked me that question.
Because I know that
Yeah,
I know that
where's the
makeup does
line?
fake facial hair, like you'll do sideburns and
Yeah.
beard, but to cover the hair.
Now, the hair department does the hair prep for you before you put the ball cap on.
Okay.
But so there's a lot of things that actually, and I think this is fun to talk about too, because there's a lot of things that are weird, like crossovers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's going to be those with props, there's going to be those with costumes, there's
Yeah.
going to be, there's always these like, wait, who does this?
Yeah.
And that's going to depend on where you're shooting a little bit, I think, for some departments. For us, not as much. For us, for wigs and makeup or hair and makeup, it's fairly similar everywhere you go until you get overseas, and then that's a totally different animal over
Why?
there. They do both hair and makeup. So whereas we here, you only do hair and makeup both before you get into the union, but once you join a union, you have to choose which craft.
So you're saying overseas, the union is one of the same?
They don't have unions in the same way we do here.
It is shockingly similar how
it's like-
G&E
yeah,
and
it's like
hair
sport,
and makeup are so similar.
Yeah, yeah.
And you would never think those 2 departments are the same.
Oh,
but
we're so, like, that's the thing. Everybody thinks we're so, like,
No.
snobby, but that's because there's too many people that
Because
are.
like G&E is like, we're gonna need more guys, and I can see you being like, we're gonna
I
need
need
more
more guys. I mean, what are you calling me, a key grip or some shit over here?
But
Good.
it is one of those things too, where like there are people that think Genie is one department because people call it Genie, and there are
Totally.
people that think hair and makeup are one department because you call it hair and makeup. Like
And we share a trailer,
Yeah,
and
they are
we're in the
separate,
same
they do different
logo.
things. But then again, overseas, it's like the electrics are the ones that set the flags. Like they, and then
Yeah.
so there are a lot of similarities
Yeah.
between.
And I always say shooting in New York is like shooting anywhere else but in French, because New York is pretty similar to anywhere else in the U.S. except for that we do just enough stuff here differently to where it's not exactly like plug and play. New York has its own special flavors of things.
its
That,
own seasoning.
yeah, we're seasoning. It comes from Chinatown.
They
which,
needed to show that they were different than L.A. That's what it
Yeah.
comes down to. They just
Listen,
they didn't want to be associated.
It's
I
very
shot
different
John
from
Wick in
LA because
Chinatown
trying to
with-
drive a 52-foot trailer down Chinatown and park.
We did, I think the cleanest I've ever seen Chinatown was when we were shooting John Wick, because we were doing those biblical rain towers. Like the whole
yeah.
beginning of the movie was in rain. And that's another thing is like, not just working on a lot of different types of jobs, but I have to know as a makeup artist, I have to know how everything is going to work in every different environment. How's it going to work if you put it in chlorine underwater? How's it going to work if you put it under rain towers? How's it going to work if you put it under rain towers? And then have a bunch of stunt people rolling around, We did a lot of tattoos on John Wick. That was a massive tattoo job. And so that was a huge part of it, is we had, tattoos stunt players were principal actors on that. They weren't just stunt doubles. So it was like, they were characters. So it was like, oh yeah, they got to match all the time. We got to do the stuff on them that we normally do on all the regular actors too. It's not just yeah, you're mostly fine, but if we see you face, we have bigger problems kind of thing.
So speaking of John Wick, or really any action movie that has like the protagonist, like the journey through the night that just gets more and more beat up with so many wounds, prosthetics, whatever, how much you just get driven crazy by, continuity. They shoot out of order and everything, of course, because you clearly enjoy putting all these things on, but...
Oh, yeah. Oh, we oftentimes... You try to think about that when you start. Steve Kelly was the department head for those movies, and he's an incredibly organized department head. So he had beautiful breakdowns. One of the reasons I enjoyed working with him, because I was like, oh, we do breakdowns really similarly. So we could like nerd out on our OCD level of paperwork, so that you're able to take a lot of the guesswork out of that continuity stuff. You break a movie down into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Again, this is a lot harder to do on something where you have 8 days to shoot and you're tandeming the first and the last day of it. So you're shooting multiple episodes at the same time. That's hard stuff to do. And that's, I think, to me, where continuity starts to get a little crazy. Working on a feature, when you know the arc of a character, that's not as hard. It's a lot harder if like you don't have scripts yet, or you don't have, or you get some sort of massive edit. But even when you get a massive edit, generally that means you had a script at some point that you can work off of. So, knowing how to do a really significant continuity breakdown is probably the first thing that I do when I jump into it. And then there's other departments also that will have their own continuity breakdowns. So then you'll work with a script supervisor who has like the breakdown. They have the day-night breakdown that you go to and you're like, tell me what day or night every one of these scenes is. And then I make sure that all my notes match that. The costume designer is going to have their own set of continuity breakdowns. And a lot of times we'll match or we'll find commonality in someone else's breakdown. Like somebody gets shot. You're like, okay, well, there's probably going to be blood. Who's doing blood? Are we going to see the bullet hole? Or are we not going to see the bullet hole? Do you need to see the blood flowing? Who's going to do the blood? If it's not going on the actor's skin, if it's just going on their costume, then that's going to be the costume department. So then that continuity gets pushed into the costume department, if that makes sense.
And how do you balance like, well, this is how it looked last time, but I can also do it better?
Oh, don't match ugly?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's one. Don't match ugly is something that sort of has like floated around throughout another colloquial saying, I guess. Continuity is like, if it looked this way last time, you're locked into it, so you better make sure it doesn't look bad. I think the more experienced you get, the more you are able to sort of see where the parameters of that are. Where if you're able to look at an image, right, you pull up either your continuity photo or you pull up, your playback on something and you say, okay, what did this look like just before? Have I seen them after this? What am I locked into between these two things? And then you can kind of push it. Depending on the project, you can also say, like, I can do that better. You could go to depending on your relationship with a script supervisor, with a camera operator, with your actor, with your director, there's a lot of different areas that you could go there to kind of be like, somebody has to give me another one because that one was really bad. But it's also like, it's my job to where if I say, if I see somebody's eyelashes hanging off halfway because I glued it on and it, something happened, I have to go to the script supervisor and say, boo-boo, make a little note on that one. You don't want those notes going back to the studio, so you want to limit how many of those there are. But that is certainly within the parameters of the, of what it is. Say you have an actor who's crying, or we can go back to prosthetics again. If you've got an actor in a prosthetic and it's like take number 27 after like 8 hours and it's just,
Healing off
it is just like a wind will come through and it will just be like, it's like oh God, those last scenes, you're just hanging on by a thread and you're like, please don't light it. That's where you can go to your DP and be like, help me, please. Those relationships become really important. again, for continuity. So the answer is you have to stick to continuity. You can't really change it dramatically. If it goes on camera and that's what it is, and you don't know for certain that they're going to throw that take away, you got to assume that they're going to use that take. You know, make your subtle adjustments so that all their other takes are better. So you hope that those are the ones they use.
Something over in the background, so you
it's
know
just
they're
me
not
like,
going to use it.
you know, kicking them.
Oh,
you know,
no.
you just like pay off your camera operator to like sneeze a couple of times and like, you know, I have known makeup artists that have done that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I
feel like a boom guy could make some money on that, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a
This
good
is the side
idea.
hustle that we talked about.
You're like, dude, just dip it just a little bit, just give it a little dip.
You just give
Here's
them
$100.
the signal and then
Yes.
I'm so gonna do that.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, I'm gonna do that. I can't even tell you. I had never thought about going to the boom operator.
Yeah, because he's kind of in control. All he has to do
thinks
is
about
go.
sound.
Take ruin.
Whoops, sorry.
I have been deliberately thrown under the bus with good intentions multiple times where, you know, the director just wants one more take, right? But the actors had enough.
Oh yeah.
And so they just, you know, they give you the look that, you know, that means I'm really sorry. And they're like, sorry, boom was in the shot. We got to go again.
That's so good. See, I want to know more of that.
If
I
you
wanna
pay them,
know.
it's
Yeah,
good.
listen
You
to
don't
the
do it for free.
podcast.
Listen, I'm just saying. Well, you know, I think that there's a lot of the departments that interact with actors at any given point, right? You get this sense of like there is an unspoken sort of like dialogue of we're all here in this in front of camera together trying to do this thing. The collaboration and the camaraderie and that trust that you build, I think, you know, in hair and makeup, we tend to be the first people, you know, and then costumes as well. We see actors in a vulnerable state. So there's already like a natural kind of like, we're going to get right to the heat of an intense relationship, you know, for a project you're doing with somebody, right?
One of those things that I don't know, it goes back to what you were saying before about different types of projects having that different camaraderie. Like when you segment it all and everybody's not working together, it's
really hard.
Yeah.
And I think the support for the actors suffer in that. And that's something that, you know, the fancy people tend to maybe listen to a little bit more. But when you have a crew, and now we have intimacy coordinators, which is awesome. But previously it was, you know, hair, makeup, and costumes that ended up filling that role in a lot of ways.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's all kinds of tricks that we used to have for things of like, you know, put somebody in a lime green bandeau bra so that they can't actually shoot any lower or things like that. You know, there's all these like little beats that before we had a role like the intimacy coordinator, you know, hair and makeup, certainly we would be the ones that were in there as closest to the actors. So whether we should have or shouldn't have been doing that, we would be ones checking in with them saying, you okay? You good? You need anything? You need, you know, so we would be those intermediaries. It is a really intimate thing that we do when you talk about making movies. Like, it's a vulnerable state. It's, you know, we've all been exploited plenty of times on any of our sets, you know, hopefully not as bad as that would need an intimacy coordinator. But, you know, it's brilliant to see the industry growing with the actual needs of it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, everybody should know a little bit of what everybody else does just in case you need to, like, staying separate from every department is just a wild concept. Like, yeah, go to your supervisor if you need to. But if you can just go to the person and talk to them because you already know them, you're already friends, you've already interacted, like, that's the way it should be.
Absolutely.
There's no reason that I should be afraid to ever have to talk to somebody in the makeup department.
No, and, you know, and there
are wrong times to do it.
Yeah, read the room, right? Like you're talking about, read the room.
Don't do it during
the room.
But like if you're in between things, it's like there's a couple hair and makeup departments that I've worked with. Like there are shows that I've done where I have a walking eye light. I have a light on a stick, and then they go back to their dark corner and they have to do touch-ups on this actor in a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I already have this light on a stick. Let's give them the same light that they have on set. So then you're matching.
We love you for that.
But that's the thing. It's like, that shouldn't be awkward. It shouldn't be like,
It should be standard.
Can I give you a light? Would it be helpful to be in the same situation that we're shooting the movie in? Like, of course it would be.
What?
So like the open dialogue across people on set needs to happen way more often.
Yeah, I agree. And then that's, I used to catch a lot of flack for it because, there's a lot of, I'm sure it happens in your guys' departments too. It's when you're coming up, it's a lot of like, stay in your lane, shut up and get to the back of the room, like know where you're supposed to be. And
I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you should know what you should be doing.
Oh, the mind games. That's a fun one. Yeah. What do you mean you don't, like, you screwed this whole thing up. I didn't tell you what to do, but you screwed this entire thing up. That means that you're never going to be good in your business of anything that you do. And you're like, what? I just got here. It's like 8:15. How did I?
Stay.
Yeah.
I'm not even getting paid.
Yeah. You guys, I just got on
Everyone's
a van.
getting paid?
I just got on a van at 96th Street. I don't even know what I'm doing here.
Is this the right show?
Oh, I've only done that a couple of times. I caught it. I never actually pulled away. That's a very New York thing, I think.
We've had someone have that story.
leaving from...
Where you're like, oh yeah, that's not the show I'm supposed to be on. I mean, I've had text messages from other additionals that were like, well, I got on the wrong van. I'm in Long Island now because I'm with Elementary or whatever.
Because we all do the same fucking pickup points.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, when they leave from the stage, you're fucked. Like... I hope the 8 vans in a row right here are all for the same shit.
Eeny, meeny, miny, that one. Yeah.
I got in the wrong van, and that's how I got my first feature. So you never know.
Hey, I want that story. That sounds fantastic. Was it the feature of the van you got on, or did you get it as a job later?
I got into a van. And it was supposed to be for something else. And on that same day, the sound person quit.
They got into your van. You guys just swapped.
Had all the stuff. So
You
they
just
said, Great,
sent him a
let's do
call
it."
sheet
Yeah.
for your job accidentally.
It was a different time, but
What did the other job do?
Great question. I don't
Never
know.
actually checked into it, though.
Exactly.
I mean, I was on the up and up. I can't be bothered by the small fry.
If a van driver, like a Teamster van driver, had a podcast and they just live streamed their... Oh, my God.
Woof.
A lot of people would be fired.
I would
People
love
would
it.
be fired.
I'd watch it.
It is, though. Teamsters have the best dirt. It's got to be from like base camp and then also just like the vans.
So like you said, you're one of the first people to interact with them.
Yeah.
So are the team. Like, who do you actually think is the first stop for gossip?
Because I would say hair and makeup.
We're the first stop in the morning.
Ooh.
So
There's levels to this. I like this.
we are the first people that they encounter generally in a day, but like roughly as a rule.
Yeah.
So we kind of set the tone. There's a lot of people that will hire me being like, you understand that you guys set the tone. And I was like, yes, just give me the resources I need to do my job and it will be great. But yeah, so we are sort of
so much.
That's all it is. And I'm going to need more guys, but bring them in. It's like 18 makeup artists start rolling in. Although I do jobs where that happens and they look at me like, why do you have all of these people here? And I was like, because you want them all ready at crew call.
Yeah.
And they take 2 hours to get ready. So that's I don't remember what your original question was, but
We were talking about kind of gossip on set.
Oh, gossip on set. Yeah,
all
we're the
think
first
it's you.
ones.
You're the first line of
Yep.
defense, basically. So.
Depends on who has the best relationship with the actor at any given point. Costumes also. They like to say it's us. We like to say it's them. But it's usually like they get a piece of it and we get a piece of it. So then like together we end up.
You're putting
you
the
build the
puzzle
whole
together.
Yeah, you never really get the whole story right away. No, you always get little like tidbits here and there. And
They tell you, and then they need to get the rest of it out of their system, so they tell it to someone else who they don't think will connect it.
Yeah, so it's just it
dolly
gets yanked out of the trailer. It's like you only get a certain amount of time where you're allowed to talk in the trailer, so that because otherwise I got to glue stuff on you or
So
whatever.
I also feel like sound probably also gets a shitload of gossip.
I would
So
think,
much, but
purpose.
we're steel
Not-
traps.
well, similar, right? We never kiss and tell, like also my favorite was how big the laugh that
Just
the
a
were steel
roaring laugh
traps from outside through the concrete walls of the studio. We could hear that. But yeah, I mean, it's we tend to know probably the best thing that we get to know is like when schedule things are going to change or if an actor's not going to do something. That's probably the best gossip. If they're like, Saturday rehearsal, we're not going to do that. And then you're like, great, I'm not working Saturday, you know? So like we get that kind of info first, you know? But yeah, in terms of like hot goss, yeah, I mean, we know who's dating each other. We know somebody's pregnant. We know like, you know, that kind of stuff. But you know,
not like the day-to-day, like what happens in the moment stuff necessarily.
It depends on who you are. And are you talking about crew gossip or gossip
like, you
about...
know, like that take sucked. This director doesn't know shit. That
all that stuff? Oh, yeah, we definitely get all that. Oh, yeah. That's
the bread and butter, honey.
Yeah, in real time, we know all those things. We know who gets along with who doesn't like who. We know all that stuff, yeah. But again, steel trap, right?
That's awesome.
We're talking about all these things that you don't say on set, because you're a steel trap.
I love the air quotes.
What are the air quotes for?
Is there something that you won't do?
Yeah.
Have you been asked to do something and you're like, absolutely fucking not?
The classic one is when you start to get into the realm of changing skin tones. That's a pretty classic one, where there's a lot of...
I wonder why you wouldn't want to.
Gee. And God, there's so many layers that go into that, but it's
a makeup joke.
Yeah.
This guy.
I'm trying to keep it light in a heavy conversation. Okay.
Light, but not
where's my
too
bourbon?
light, right?
Oh my God.
I can't. You guys, the number of puns that are coming through my body right now, like I can't.
Well,
even...
you made me fucking do it again, so now I'm just gonna
stop
make it.
Oh, they're all fighting to get out at the same time. So many dad jokes. Yeah, but you know, changing skin tone, I think it's something that we do, right? But there's a line. And when there's something, you know, it is almost always happens with stunt performers, and it's on productions with people who don't plan, because good stunt coordinators, pretty much every stunt coordinator I've ever worked with, casts their stunt people according to who your actors are that they're going to be doubling. That's a big part of it. But there's been times where they've had somebody on set and they had to throw somebody in and they were like, hi, can you make them match this person who's from Sudan? And you're like, no, I cannot. They're a person who's from Minnesota, like me. I will not be doing that. You know, and learning how to say no in a respectful way, I think, is a really important thing in this business, because we're always taught to say yes to everything, no matter what. But there's times where people will put you in positions like that. You know, chances are the producer isn't thinking about it at all. They're not thinking about how awful of a request that actually is. They're just thinking about what they need to do to get the thing to camera. So then it's my job as a professional to say, pause, please. That's not something we're going to be doing here. You know,
I do feel like also that like the hierarchy of production is someone said that, and now it's getting passed to this person, and then the person that's actually coming to you to ask you to do it is so separate from it that they're like just asking.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is be like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well, because on paper you're saying, here's the actor, here's their double, send the double to makeup. That's what it is on paper.
there's no
Correct.
like
But you're not saying,
like-
hey, let's change an ethnicity.
Yeah.
And you're like, nope, we're going to not do that.
So it's good. Yeah, I agree. I think like more people need to learn when to say no.
Yeah, and I
You
think
need to not be scared to say no.
yeah, and learning that, I mean, I think we're taught that saying no means you're never going to get the job again. You know, is that if you say no, but like there's times I'm hired as a head of department as like, again, you know, ace in somebody's back pocket. I have this wide breadth of experience that I'm going to bring into a show to be able to give my 2 cents as a head of department of what is the type of thing that'll work for this show? Do you need to have a prosthetic here? Do you know, this is where you're really going to want to have a thing. Like, I'm really there to give a lot of options to the filmmakers. You know, my hands, their show, that kind of an idea. You know, in that, there's going to have to be times where you say, this thing isn't possible, but this is what I can do for you. And I think that's really where I've tried to find a sweet spot in my careers, to be like, okay, you wanted this thing. This is what it will take to do this thing. And usually that's all you have to say because they're like, no, we don't want to do that. As opposed to saying, no, we can't do this thing that takes $100,000 and will take 4 hours to do and blah, blah, blah. But if you say, here's what we can do. It's going to take 4 hours. It'll be $100K. This is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. This is what you can't do. This is what you can't do. You give them all that information and then they make the call. And if that's how they want to spend their money.
Are you giving them real numbers or are you making it sound harder than it is?
No, I generally give them real numbers because nobody ever wants to pay for anything.
Right.
So,
No, but that's a legitimate question.
So it becomes a hard number. Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I don't know anybody's business.
$30 can sometimes become a hard number.
Yeah, and you're like, sorry, I didn't know that's where we were.
Damn.
But yeah, or let me know before the budget runs out, will you? So that I can make some adjustments over here before the whole movie runs
get
out
my
of money.
invoice paid before.
Yeah. That, oh God, love that weekly pay. Thanks, union. I do love that weekly paycheck. But yeah, so, learning how to say no is an art form in and of itself, I think. And, there's very few times where I've ever had to really put my foot down and be like, absolutely not. Safety is always one where I do it. And I don't care who's telling me what. If I know that something isn't safe yet, my crew's not going in, period.
But I think if you are someone that is known for saying yes, when you say no, they respect that,
Yeah, to an extent. I think it's when is the no,
Sure.
in what context is that no coming? But
Right,
but I
it's
do
the
agree.
balance.
I do agree that if you're somebody who just always says that can't be done, that people will be like, okay, can't be done, and then they'll move on and go do something else. But when your voice has weight, when you generally are correct in the things that you're saying, I think I get a lot of people because I look the way that I do that don't trust me out of the gate. It's fine. You guys look a lot younger than I am. I'm happy about that. No big deal. But it does come with its own set of she'd even have the experience to know what we're talking about. Is this that,
Were you
where
saying
is
with
it?
other makeup artists or?
No, this is generally with
applying for a job.
other departments.
Oh, okay.
I would say any other departments, producers, directors, really anybody, even other departments. Within the makeup world, I think we can tell each other's experience, and I don't look like I'm inexperienced within that world. So, yeah, I think it's a hard place to be to have to say no, especially when it's something that production wants you to do. When it's something that production wants you to do, and it might be a little iffy or something like that. Trust your gut, man. You have to trust your gut on what's safe and what isn't.
Sure.
I mean, we have safety on set for a reason. Production is not your friend. Even when your friends are
I didn't even
in
fucking
production.
prompt that one.
Oh, was that? Did I tee that one up for you?
I love that.
And here's the thing. So, production is there to do a job. They're also hired to do a job. I'm hired as a head of department to get these looks on camera. It's my job as a department head to figure out how to make that happen in an efficient way, in a cost-effective way, in a way that all the actors are happy with and nobody's having crazy allergies to something,
Do you?
Yeah.
Being the department head, I know with the Grip and Electric crews, my gaffer has a crew. When he gets a job, he has a crew. Do you have a makeup crew, or is it based on we have a cast that's like this, it's this kind of project, I know these people that have more experience doing a period piece, or do you hire based off of that, or do you have 5 people that you always bring with you no matter what?
I have a stable of people that I work with often, and I think most of us do. When you start to get into a shorthand, especially with a key, I would say a key and department head relationship is one that's very symbiotic, because my opinion is that a key should know how to do everything a department head can do. They just don't. They do other things than the department head does, but if a department head needs to go somewhere and is not there, that key is the person that steps up into that role. And so again, taking from V's world, I hire people who are incredibly competent around me, and who could do the same job that I'm doing. They can't do it the way I would do it because I'm me and they're them, but I don't, a lot of people get threatened, I think, by having really talented people around them. I'm not that person. I'm dope. That means we're going to make something that looks so much better than I could do on my own.
Absolutely.
You know, so I have a tendency to certainly staff based on the needs of the project. Because I like to work on a lot of different types of projects, that means I'm going to utilize a bunch of different people. On Task that we just did last year in Pennsylvania, that was a job that had a lot of struggles that we had to overcome as a crew. So it was a hard location job. We were rarely, if ever, on stage. We were in Pennsylvania in the summer, outside. We also had a big cast. We did a ton of tattoos on that job. So that was that's its own entity and its own animal. That's basically prosthetics, just kind of different. You're still gluing something made out of glue onto somebody's body that has to look real. So I had to have people on that job that were fast, because that was probably one of the biggest constraints that I was given when we started that job. Was we are daylight dependent for this entire show. We cross-boarded all 8 episodes. So we basically shot an 8-hour movie. Wow. That, again, if you hadn't ever done a cross-boarding like that, that would have broken your brain, I think. For me, I prefer that because I'm it's a movie.
Yeah.
Got it. You know, I just break it down like it's a movie. I don't really worry about the episodes here or there. I know where they are and I know the break points so that we can build tension and stuff like that with subtle things. But you know the character arcs. So, but that was really hard because then you're that's a movie. That's a hard ass movie.
It's 3 movies.
Yeah, all at one time.
Yeah.
You know, so you're shooting second units. We had something 57 tandem days or something on that. We were basically running 2 units simultaneously. We would have 3-4 cameras, you know.
And you're the head between those 2 units?
Yeah, I was the head for, we had a core 4 team on that. Makeup departments are usually 2 people, core, which is the department head, the key, and then we have a third position that tends to be...
Like the Bert.
The Bert.
The third of the makeup world.
We're just going to start calling it the Bert from here on out.
When you're running tandems, the makeup artist follows their actor. It's not necessarily following your unit.
That depends.
Really?
That depends on the size of the actor and how production is running it. It is always preferable in my world to do that.
Yeah.
Because you, again, have the same consistency. And it's also about the same hand. I mean, you know, to be a really good makeup artist, you need to be able to match a lot of different people's hands. But not everybody can do that. And that doesn't mean you're a bad makeup artist. It just means that, I'm an incredibly light-handed makeup artist. I do sheer washes of everything. To get to a big drag makeup, say, I would have to push myself. I'd be okay, because it's a different amount of makeup, it's a different hand.
Right.
I may not be the best person to bring in for that if you have other people who do drag makeup all the time. So that's sort of the way that I staff accordingly. However, I'm going to be the right person to bring in if you need somebody who can do fucking anything, you know. So. Right. So you staff kind of accordingly to that. I couldn't bring somebody on Task that didn't know how to do tattoos because that was such a significant part of what the job ended up being, because we had doubles, we had, all those kinds of things. Similarly with prosthetics, but if you need, Hunger Games is a great example of that. I watched the way that they staffed that, and it was depending on which Hunger Games it was, they had slightly different people in there doing say all the big capital background. By the time we got to 3 and 4, it was all those big beauty avant-garde, which your average makeup artist doesn't get the opportunity to do that all that often. So they're not going to be as good at it. I was teaching a class for the union with V out here, and I remember talking with her about it as she was looking at everybody's skill sets and stuff like that, and we were chatting about it. And, and I was just saying, the thing that's a bummer about New York is that it's the same types of work here, right? You don't get the opportunity to really flex your muscles and do a lot of different stuff once you get out of the indie world where you kind of have to do everything, right? Because you're well, I don't know, somebody's got to do it, so I guess that's me. So it's a shift, but it's a nice shift, I think. Task was such a great experience because I really had to pull out almost everything from my experience to do that job, because it was a project that was originally going to be smaller, and then it just bloomed into a much bigger entity. You know, we had stunts, we had all kinds of different stuff. You know, car rigs, all the yummy meat of doing a show like that. And it's really fun. It takes place in the same universe as Mayor of Easttown. Is the best way I can describe it. Different cast, different characters, different setting, but
Same vibe.
But yeah, it's very much Brad Inglesby, the creator and writer, is from the area, and he's in so many ways. When we were shooting this, I remember we were shooting this particularly precarious stunt thing that I won't go into yet until it airs, but we were just in this moment, and I walked up to him, and he was kind of like surveying, the insanity of what it was we were doing. And I just said to him, I said, Brad, this is like a love letter to Pennsylvania, isn't it? And he's like, yeah, I think you're right. Because we were shooting some of the most beautiful cinematic shots of trees and just the world around us, and there's a lot of this that takes place sort of running through foliage.
Like outside Philly.
You were not in Philly then.
We were not in Philly proper for most of it.
Grease poles and shit.
You said the word beautiful.
We were not in
and
Philly
that took me
proper.
out
We
of
were
it right away.
outside.
This was downtown.
We were Delco babes. We were Delco babes down there. So
Delco.
yep. So that was it was really amazing too, because as part of that team, we had a bunch of people from New York, and then we had a bunch of people from Philly locals as well. Bethany, who was our co-key, was phenomenal. She's from Delco, so she was our like, Bethany, do you buy it? What do you think? It was like if Bethany could sign off on it for us, that would be that. And that's such a huge boon when you're doing a show that exists in a real place. Even though we weren't doing real characters, you still are. There's an authenticity that having someone who's from there brings that I think was really amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it would be, you would get all the stuff of like, oh yeah, I totally went to high school with that girl, whoever it is you're putting on camera. So that like, okay, you're nailing it if the people that are from there are saying, yep, there you go. It's like when the paramedics give me a like, wow, that looks really good. Whenever I do a like blood thing, I was always like, yes. I was like, is director happy? Yeah, that's fine. As long as the paramedic's like, that looks really real.
That's what it looks like when someone's face
That
gets
is what
off.
it looks like, yeah. So, and this show gave us a little bit of everything. We were doing doubles, we were doing hair work, we were doing tattoos. This was a huge tattoo job. And tattoos are such a fun part of what we get to do because they can push someone into a character makeup really quickly with relatively minimal effort, and you get a lot of payoff from it. They're tricky to work with because people, and by people I mean other filmmakers on set, because tattoos are so accepted as just a thing in the wilderness and the wild now, that you get people that won't treat them in the same way that you will prosthetics, even though there's still something glued on top of someone's skin. Like they're not actually real, but the more real they look and the better. I've done my job the best if nobody has any idea that I did anything, which is
there's
hard on the ego.
There's some actors that I see with tattoos, and then when you see them without tattoos, you're like, wait, you don't actually have full sleeves? Like,
and
what?
Tattoo cover is a whole other part of it. So on this job, what we were having to do is we utilize some of the actors' real tattoos, and then there's a whole process of like going through clearances and getting like signed off from the tattoo artist that actually did it because they own the artwork. It's
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That happened on Yellow Brick Road because one of the actresses had all of the they were like Tim Burton drawings on her.
Oh yeah.
So she had to get a letter clearing that artwork because it belonged to a larger.
So that becomes an even bigger deal because you're dealing with whomever owns those. Yeah. So if that was Disney or whoever it is, I'm not sure who owns the rights to that.
But I can't imagine you have to get clearance for a little, like, this is a
au contraire, mon frère.
thing that I told my guy to draw.
Tattooed yourself in prison.
Well, no, like I told, like
if
I
you
came
were the
up with this,
tattoo artist,
but like
it's like, so the idea is like the same way the art department has to get a painting cleared. Mm-hmm. Right? It's sort of the same idea. You got to get the studios all to sign off on whatever the image is. But, the classic ones were like, if you have a copyrighted image, can't do it, because then they're going to have to get if you have Tweety Bird, you're going to have to get Disney to sign off on your thing, plus then go through, we were HBO for tasks. So if somebody had a Tweety Bird thing, they'd be like, okay, who owns Tweety Bird? That actually happened to me on Murder at the End of the World. We wanted to put on a Studio Ghibli tattoo on one of the characters, but we could not get the clearances for it in time because we had to get, and like, when you get clearances, like it's similar to Apple. Like if you guys have ever worked with Apple or, any of those companies for art department or props, like there's stipulations about what kind of content they're willing to work with you on.
We heard a lot about iPhones.
Yeah, iPhones. Yeah, they're exactly. So it's like what you can and can't do and what is the content. It will change and we actually ran into that on task as well, actually. We wanted to get, there was a couple of like local tattoos that, the filmmakers that were making this were like, everybody had this tattoo when we were growing up here. And it was like, okay, we can't get that because it's going to, it's like the 76ers logo or whatever.
I thought you were going to say it's like fucking the Birds eagle.
Yeah. I mean, sports ball.
Go Birds.
But exactly. I mean, exactly that kind of a thing. So you'd have to get the NFL to sign off on it and all that stuff, which like rarely are they going to do unless you're working on something where you've got like Brad Pitt in it or, an A-lister who has some, but even then it's going to limit the choices you can make as an actor because you can't say a bad word or you can't, whatever the stipulations they put are. So it affects your performance. Fair enough. So I think when you're dealing with something like tattoos, when you have all you're doing is putting a tattoo on, great. You just get rid of the hair on the body of wherever it is you're trying to put it on because it will not stick over hair. And then good to go. If you have a tattoo that then you have to that you have to cover with makeup and then put another tattoo on top of that, that's even harder.
Whoa.
Because the makeup
That's tattoo inception.
It is tattoo inception, which is like, when you have to do a tattoo cover and then a tattoo over the top of it, that's like, those are the things we try to not ever do to ourselves so that when you have to go back and redo them, that you're like, why did I do this to myself?
What, do you guys do anything for like reference points day to day to make sure it's in the same spot? Or is it just eyeballing?
Yeah. No.
It's not,
It depends.
Like is the sheet a certain shape to make sure that it fits them the same way?
So everything is measured to the actor's body unless you're using a generic tattoo. You can buy generic tattoos that aren't made.
Tribal.
But for principal actors, you're going to get it sized. You can also get it aged to a certain degree. So if it's like a 10-year-old tattoo, if it's a 25-year-old tattoo. We did some really fun stuff on task where we had these two different groups. We had some bikers. And so we had different age groups of the bikers. We had kind of like the younger, more like current hierarchy. And then we had like the OGs. And with the OGs, this is where the fun research into everything comes in. So like when you're talking about motorcycle clubs, there's all kinds of rules, right? But when you're talking about ink, there's a generational divide because the like 70s era of the Vietnam vet bikers, which is a lot of what we think of as bikers in the US, those guys would have very few tattoos. They would often have a military tattoo of some kind. If they are of the Vietnam era, they would have their blood type tattooed on them. That was incredibly common for guys coming back from Vietnam. So you'd just have like, somewhere here, you'd have a blood type. And then really, if you were part of a motorcycle club, that would be the only ink you would have because you would not want to interfere with the club ink. That would be the big important thing. So we were able to show with some of the OG characters that we were able to show that by the type of tattoos we put on him and how many and where. And we faded them out in a really significant way. All of that stuff gets to be probably the most fun when you start getting into something like tattoo work, because then you're like, well, how old is it? Is it raised? Like, was this done in a bar room while you were drunk? Like, what's the backstory into this that will make it look that way?
Yeah, it's like world building right there.
Yeah.
Can
on
you
somebody's
name
arm.
the company that you order these tattoos from?
I do a bunch of different people. No, there's a bunch of different ones. So most of them, whenever I do tattoo work, I always get them custom made. There's a few different people. Steve Kelly, I mentioned before, who did all the John Wick stuff. So he made all of the tattoos for John Wick.
Okay.
So that was, we had an in-house person doing all of that. That was incredibly hard on him because he was, again, on set doing all of the same work, doing all of, he was doing Keanu, he was doing all that stuff, running the department, and then he'd have to go home at night and print tattoos, which is incredibly hard. As opposed to
it's just
having
a printer ink?
Once it gets down to it, it's a printer ink on a special type of paper. Then you spray it with a certain kind of glue. Everybody has their own recipe for glue. So the tattoo makers are not necessarily all the same because each of them does it a little bit differently. So in terms of which tattoos last longer, which ones are, look this way, better or worse, that kind of a thing. That tends to then be where the artist comes in of who's made them. Okay. And there's a lot of different ways that you can have them made. You can have, and I've done this differently, when I did A Murder at the End of the World with, I only remember people's character names. This is the worst part about it. Harris Dickens, who's just in Baby Girl, who's a lovely, lovely actor to work with, and he was so patient. Great example of how tattoo work can be completely different on two different people. So he had 1, 2, 3... I think he had either 3 or 4 different artists work on him. Some of his stuff was physically drawn by, like the image and artwork was drawn by, some of it was Mandy Bassetti, some of it he drew himself, so some of it was the actor, which is awesome. I love when an actor is down to get into that, especially if it's something like a tattoo where they're like, yep, this is my artwork, like check it out. This character would have that, so then I can get that made into a tattoo and then put it on as a tattoo for him.
That's cool.
I love stuff like that. So that happened. I pulled general stock from people I knew's stock. I did that on Task as well, where I was like, cool, I know everything you have in your stock. Give me all of this stuff. And then I'll have tattoo artists actually physically draw stuff for me too. Like if I need flash drawn or if I need a particular flavor of something, just go straight to a tattoo artist. Huh. They may not actually make the tattoo for me, but they'll draw the artwork. And then I just got to get it in a vector file and send it off to the people making it. Some of the people who make it will do all of the work. They'll do all of the drawing. They'll do all of the, pre-vising and send it off to you. Mm-hmm. So it depends on who you work with. But I mean, I love working with Jason Milani. He's one of the fastest people I've ever known. Steve does a bunch of tattoo work. Louis makes a ton of people make tattoos.
But it's not just like Manhattan Wardrobe Supply where you're going and I need this printed as a tattoo.
No, actually, they don't do it.
Right.
You have to find a makeup artist who makes tattoos in order to do it. Cool. Christian Tinsley is a big industry name who does a lot of that artwork too. And each person is a little different in terms of like when you give them an image, what do they own, what do they not own, that kind of thing. So,
right. I like that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's vendors, and you get to be the sort of like brain at the top of all of it, being like, cool, this over here and that one over here, and building out your vendors is very much like building your team in the same way. Task was a job where I had a really. It wasn't that they were all really different artists, but I had a group of artists working with me on that who hadn't necessarily all worked together in like maybe 10 years or so. Like everybody kind of knew each other from like beginning indie days when we were all scrambling to try to get where we are now. And it was really interesting to see because you never know how those folks are all going to jive together because you may hire the right people to do the actual makeups that are required, but if they can't work together as a team, I am dead in the water because I'm a team builder. Not everybody is going to do a department the way that I do. I like things to be more egalitarian. I want the artists in my department to have ownership in the makeups that they're doing. They're not just there to be my hands because I can't do it. You still got to do exactly what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it. But, it's why I like to try to keep the same actors with the same artist because you build that rapport. And I want that artist to feel like they have some skin in the game for that makeup that they're doing. I never did well when I just had to come in and like put makeup on somebody for no reason and then be like, okay, bye. That was always hard for me.
There is an element to sharing a project too. Be like, watch this person, I did that, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I set up a light somewhere in the back somewhere in some scenes.
Well, also like if you're watching somebody, so for us, if say like I do a makeup and I send you to set with it to watch it, if you changed that makeup, you would be in so much trouble.
Right.
You would be in so much trouble. But yet, if you had to make a change on the makeup, you're like stuck there, right? You're like, wait, but I had to because like a thing, so then it's like, oh God, well, what do I do? And it's like, okay, well, you make the change,
That's
you
why
do
you're
the
on
thing.
Walkie.
That's why I'm on Walkie.
Yeah.
My team hates it because I try to make them go on Walkie and they all mutiny. They're like, I can't do it. And I was like, listen, you're going to know everything. I'm telling you. And they were like, I hate it. So they would do it, but begrudgingly. Like I definitely would come out of somewhere. Like on task, we had so many amazing locations that we were doing. So we were trying to do all this incredibly hard work, but then on location. So like we would leave the trailer in the morning and we would never come back again.
Wow.
Like it just, that was it. So I was doing all of those kinds of crazy, we called it the pit crew, because we had a tent set up for us on set with air conditioners. And I was like, I have to fight for this. I know that sounds like such like bougie things, especially being a New Yorker, being like, you guys got a tent every day? But it was mandatory. Like there wasn't, like I knew going into that job that I was like, we're going to be daylight dependent. They're shooting a million cameras. They don't totally know what they're going to do every day, and like that, because that was the other big thing is we had, I don't know, we got through maybe page 46 in like a 250 page shooting schedule at our production meeting. And so then we were like, well, we're going to wing it. Like when we get to the back end of it,
Damn.
which
Wow.
is a true testament to crews. Because there's no way you could do that without an absolutely spectacular crew.
Sure.
So
They were
speaking of like crew,
Yeah.
your crew's all union. How does the makeup union work? Is it like IATSE? Is it like
Yeah, we're IATSE. There's two of them. So I'm Local 798, which is East Coast, based out of New York. And then Local 706 is based out of Hollywood. So that's the California sort of West Coast union. There's some specifics that go in between that, but 798 has the largest jurisdiction. We're like everything from Maine to Florida to like the Mississippi, basically.
damn?
So Louisiana, Georgia, here, Carolinas, that's all us. Chicago's a little like different. They're more like equity houses. So then it gets into like a little.
Wait, they have their own little thing going on?
I feel like I don't know as much about makeup and IATSE there, but my understanding with Chicago is that they're not like an all over every production. It's more like theaters, like regional theaters, where
when you
each
say
house has its own union contract.
when you say Chicago, I can tell
The Midwestern.
from Midwest.
Oh, it came out.
But New York is similar that way too, because like
Chicago.
Oh, for crying out loud.
52 negotiates its own contract separate from the Hollywood 13 or the area standards. So
Yeah.
there are specific cities that will negotiate their own contract that operate independently from the larger contract that covers the whole country.
Well, and then you get into contracts, and we have 8 billion different contracts. There's
we need
some
6
of us.
more shows to talk about.
We really do. Let's do like a union show when we come back,
Sure,
because
yeah.
like I have a lot of info about it. But we have the majors agreement, and then there's also some people under our jurisdiction that work under the area standards. It just depends on when they got brought into our local world. But the way you get into either one is different, and you don't automatically get one, or one doesn't equal two in that sense, and it's not an easy shift if you're going to transfer. That's not, I think the unions don't necessarily want you to be doing that, because you kind of end up being each other's competition a little bit.
You
but
worked in Hawaii though. Like how does?
I never worked in Hawaii.
didn't?
When I did stuff in California, it was non-union.
Okay.
So I was,
For some reason, I thought one of the Hunger Games was out there.
it did, but I didn't go with it.
Oh, okay,
I
okay,
was on another job. The Hawaii stuff, I can't remember. I
Does
think
Kron-
V and I were doing Spider-Man prep at the time that they were
Okay.
doing that.
I guess
can't remember.
the question is when you cross the line, do you have to get like a waiver to work over there?
I think there are
Cross
some
the
stuff like
Mississippi?
that.
Well, yeah, like if you're 798, not the other. Like I already forgot the union number because I don't care about the West Coast. Like if
shots
you
fired.
go over there, like do they have to give you permission?
Yeah, there is something like that, and similar for them when they come here. Now, if you hold both cards, which is possible,
Yep.
Not likely, but it is possible. That becomes a different thing. It more becomes like, where is the production hiring you out of? Like, are they hiring you as a New York local? Or are they hiring you as a California local? And then, so are you a distant hire? Are you not a distant hire? You know, that's all the stuff too that, like, on top of how do you do a ball cap in 30 minutes? I was like, right, but also how do you do a distant hire versus a, you know, I'm like, where do all that...
nearby versus distant versus local versus what? I mean, I guess that's some of the. I asked you briefly earlier, but like when there's a lot of actors that have their own team.
Yeah, personals. Personals are another. You know, there's so many different parts of what we do under the makeup header.
I'm like blown away. There's so many different parts here.
And there's even times where, like, as the head of department, I'm maybe not necessarily the last word in something. So when you come in as a personal, you are not really, this is delicate because it's not, I'm not great at this distinction, but as a personal, the only person that you're worrying about is that one actor that you've been hired for. So you're not really a part of the department in the same way that you would be if you were hired within the department or by the department head or by the production and had a role in it. So really, like, really great personals will work with the heads of department or whoever it is that's designing the show and whatnot, so that you're working within the same world, or they'll, like, maybe share what they're doing with their actor with you. Not everybody does that, you know. You get a lot of territorialness around that, but a good relationship in that should be like that. And that becomes a different thing because when you're an actor request, you don't necessarily have to be in the union to work on a union film. But you do have to get a waiver for it, and generally the union's going to want you to try to join if you've been in for a certain amount of time on that. But then there's processes that go into that, and that is a way that people who have done a lot of, like, music videos or places like that will come into the makeup departments and be able to jump in and be like, okay, now I'm going to learn how to do this.
So are they like the actors requesting this person? Okay,
and you come in with the actor, so it's like the actor hires you.
And they could potentially be that person that's like when they're like last looks, it's that person, not you.
Correct. It would only be that person. Like, even as a head of department, if someone had a personal, I would not touch them as an actor unless that personal asked me to for some reason.
Does that get in the way of your team building?
It's different. It's because it just makes the dynamic a little bit different in the trailer. But generally, it's like when you have a good group of people, in many ways, it takes something off your plate, right? So that's one less actor that you have to worry about. Okay. You have a little less maybe control over the general look of something. So, like, that can be frustrating if you're a control freak and you want to, like, you know, have your hands and everything like I always do. But it doesn't necessarily, like, hinder that, because still, as a head of department, you're still responsible for the day-to-day, right? That's, personals get to do all the fun stuff in a lot of ways. Like, they're dealing with one actor, they're not dealing with all the BS of the production. You generally come in with a little bit more cachet. If you're a personal with a big actor, you're like, all right, you're kind of in their bubble, you know? So you get protected by them in many ways, and that's really beneficial. I mean, we've all been on jobs where it's like, boy, I really wish somebody had my back in this one. So, so that's a plus side to being a personal.
I want to be a personal.
Well, I'm like, does it take
it's a lot, though.
Does it take somebody away from your budget? Like, there's
if
a personal, so we can't hire you.
They should not come out of your budget. No, they shouldn't. If somebody was trying to put a personal into your budget, that would be an indicator, I think, that they weren't setting. So it's actually
the actor that's paying that person at that point?
Not necessarily the actor. It could be production that's paying that person. But
coming out of the talent budget.
But they're going to find money for that differently. Yeah, in the same way
that's good to know. I mean,
I mean, if there's a producer that's being like, we're going to have 4 personals, you're running the department, and also those 4 personals come out of your manpower, I'd be like, cool, find another department head. Like, you can't run a show that way. Yeah. Unless the people left were 2 actors, in which case, okay, fine. I could do 2 actors on my own, you know.
Well, that's only a 4-person cast, and then you just go on vacation.
Then I have a really nice tie. I do the 8 and skates, and I go home, you know. But I'm also somebody that I really love being on set. Even though it's awful hours and you never see your family and all that stuff, I really love the magic of what's happening on set. And it's the thing that I keep coming back to. Like, lab work is its own thing for us. I don't love lab work. It's really cool. It's sculpting. It's making stuff out of nothing, but it's not where I thrive and not what I love. I love that unknown of the actor who's sitting in front of you.
I feel like we all kind of love that.
Yeah.
Like there's a love-hate relationship, but
You were masochists a little bit?
Absolutely. But I feel like you had a great experience, and there was like this magic moment, and then we're all like kind of addicted.
Trying to get, we are chasing that dragon for forever. Yeah. I mean, I very much say that like I'm unemployable in any other context, you know, because I just have so much fun here that I was like, wait, you mean I couldn't make fart jokes on Channel 1 at this office job?
And after talking to you, I feel like Grip and Electric and Hair and Makeup, they should be way better friends with each other.
I'm telling you.
Because this is basically the same shit. We're just on a truck. You're in a trailer. Like
it's literally the same shit, different day.
Sometimes it's our truck towing that trailer.
And I can't stand it. I will say this. There's a lot of hair and makeup people out there that look of themselves as though they're separate from the rest of the crew. I don't and never have felt that or believed that. And so you get that bit of that distance, because you are around the actors, so your timing and everything is different. And like you can maybe get into the actor's green room, you know, when it's cold outside or whatever. But the real meat of that is that we are no different. There is no difference, you know, because I work in base camp doesn't mean I'm any better than anybody else. You know, it doesn't mean that I should get to park somewhere that anybody else doesn't. Am I going to cash in on that when I can?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but like, you know, I worked really hard to get to that point where I had that parking spot, man. You know, a lot of minivans driven away from sets with nothing in them but makeup, you know.
that's how you started, you know.
Yeah. You know, I can stay to my roots.
It's a good way to
You know
build
what
a
I
kit.
mean? It is.
Steal
I
the
worked
van
off
with
of
a
just steal the makeup van. I just also like
minivan
the
pays
idea
for
that
a
there's
lot
a
of makeup.
minivan full of makeup somewhere. I mean, it was kind of like that with V. I unloaded like $30,000 of like one Mac order or something my first day, and I was like, is this what it's always like? The answer is no. It's not always like that. But
Sometimes it's more.
it's going to be hard pressed to get more than I saw come in on that one. But
Well, I mean, like, you know, I feel like the general consensus of this episode has been like, we all need to like look
makeup
at it.
is just a shitty rig, essentially.
That's true,
production
but
is.
that production in general. I mean, we all just have
that's
to
true.
like, we all have to kind of collaborate and talk more.
We do. And, you know, and that's what comes into like safety, period. Like that is where you end up having the most conversations. And it's like, wait, is production trying to do this to you guys? Because production told me this, you know. We are so often left out of safety meetings because our work is all done offset. It's like we don't get included in the same stuff. So you got to make a real active effort as a makeup artist to go find people to get information. So I totally agree that we need to have a lot more of that.
Overall, communication. All the departments need to actually talk together. And,
Yeah.
And we're all dealing with similar problems.
Yeah.
And we're not so separated, you know.
Yeah.
Like
we
so,
totally aren't.
And it just makes it more fun.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, we got to do something if we're having, you know, I mean, look, I can get a lot of mileage out of a fart machine on a set, let me tell you. I can get a lot of mileage out of that.
Preach.
You know, I'm just saying. That should probably be
Well,
the
on that
note.
Anna, thank you for coming in and talking to us.
Great.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back for something else.
Yeah,
And-
this was too fun to do this
Yeah,
quickly.
I think we're going to do something else after this, but I know this is going to come out right around when Task comes out. So if you want to check out the work Anna did on Task, you can see it on HBO.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Excuse me, it's called Max.
Whatever, dude.
I just work here.
Cheers.
I just work here.
Cheers. Bye.
We did it.
Yay.